invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is Pastor Adele Resmer here from the New Journey ELCA Lutheran Church? Hi.
I am.
Welcome.
Good evening. Let me apologize ahead of time that I will not be able to stay for the deliberations this evening. My husband's returning from the East Coast, and I need to go pick him up. But before that, let us pause to invite the Spirit of God, the power that is greater than ourselves, the energy that runs through all of creation, that energy that connects us one to another and draws us out of ourselves for the welfare of others. May that energy, that power, that Spirit of God that ignited the desire to serve of this town council open hearts and minds so that all that is said and listened to this evening be done with kindness, with respect, with open-handedness, and a commitment to expect and reflect the best of others. Amen.
Thank you. We're welcoming Angela here as our clerk, so we'll try to be kind to her, and we're ready for a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Dickey?
Here.
Vice Mayor Toles?
Here.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Leckrone?
Present.
Councilmember Charno?
Here.
Councilmember Spellich?
Present.
And Councilmember Magazine is not present.
Thank you very much. First, we have our reports by mayor, council members, and town manager. I'll start with our town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, as you're aware, officially this week, our finance director, Craig Rodolfi, he's going to retire. He's actually technically was supposed to retire back in January, but as you're aware, we had a very difficult time trying to fill his shoes. So we're gonna adequately embarrass him later. But tonight, I wanted to introduce you to his new replacement. Again, we went through quite a bit of recruitments. I think 3 in all before we finally were able to find not only someone that had the skill set we were looking for, but also the fit and the ability to get along with the entire organization. So I'm going to go ahead and call on David Pock. David Pock is our new finance director. He actually started alongside Craig last week, so he's cross-training with Craig to be brought up to speed. I'm going to go ahead and have David just kind of share a little bit about his background and his experience. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Pock.
Thank you.
Hi.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. I don't know if anybody can hear me. Just to give you a brief background, I moved to Arizona in 2003. I was a member of the California Air National Guard at that time, and I took a transfer into a full-time position at the 161st Air Refueling Wing at Sky Harbor in the command post. So for the next few years, I worked graveyard shifts and then went to school at ASU to get my bachelor's degree. After I recovered from that experience, a few years later, I decided to go back and get my master's in accounting and finance management. And I also moved to the Department of Revenue at that time. Unfortunately, that position that I had there didn't count towards my CPA licensure experience. So I moved to the Arizona Auditor General and worked there for about 6 years. While I was doing that, getting my experience, I also went back to school, had a little GI Bill money left, so I went back for another master's degree in public administration. Also got my certification from the AGA as a certified government finance manager, and also my CPA. So as if that wasn't enough, I took a position at the town of Gilbert as their senior accountant and did that for about a year, and then moved into their assistant accounting manager position and did that and went through our Munis implementation for about a year, year and a half, and then I was looking for something else, and I had met Craig at a couple GFOA conferences, and when I was finished with Munis, the position was still open, and I went for it, so that's how I'm here. I'm excited about it. I'm sure Craig's excited about it.
Can't you tell?
Yeah. I can say that it's going to be a good transition. He's done a wonderful job documenting processes. His staff's great, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Happy to have you. Any council have any activities they'd like to report on? Oh, yes, Councilman Spelch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had the pleasure of, not the pleasure, the sadness, but I was invited to the a police memorial for officers killed in the line of duty. Last week was National Law Enforcement Police Week. 163 names were added to the wall of in Washington, D.C. of police officers that were killed in the line of duty in 2018. Number way too high. So we pay respect to the officers that have died in the line of duty, and I went there, and it was my honor to be there, and I would just like to have everybody remember in their thoughts and prayers the officers that have given their lives for us. That's it.
Thank you, Councilman.
Well,
Councilman Chernow?
and yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And just to follow up on that, I know there's been a lot of presentations out there, and you know, we approved the Blue Christmas tree a while back, the concept to honor public safety personnel, first responders, and I know they're still looking for donations for that, so I just thought I'd throw that out there after the last announcement. Moving on, I did attend a Valley Metro board meeting last Thursday, nothing significant to report out of that. On Saturday morning, I did attend a celebration down in Mesa at Gilbert and Main Roads. The Valley Metro opened up another 2-mile stretch of the light rail, so it goes all the way down Main to Gilbert Road, and there's a new park and ride facility there. So before you had to drive down to Evit area to hop on light rail, but now it goes all the way up to Gilbert Road. So it was a real festive occasion, a lot of other mayors and other representatives there. So it was just my honor and privilege to represent Fountain Hills at that event. So,
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mayor.
Yes, Councilwoman.
This was a few weeks ago, but I did attend with the League a policy committee for neighborhood sustainability, and there's a couple ideas in discussion, pretty good ideas. They're kind of difficult to explain right now, but as I get more information when we go forward, I can share that. And then also they all discussed, this is a bunch of people from a lot of cities from around Arizona that get together and talk about these issues. And one of the other issues was the short-term rentals. So of course everyone shared some of the issues that they are having, and certainly we've had a couple issues ourselves. So as a committee, we're trying to come up with some solutions. So I'll report back when I have more information.
Thank you, Councilwoman. A couple of things that I've been up to. We've been meeting a lot with some honorary councils from different countries, just happened to have it for the last 2 weeks. Also, Grady and I attended a Canada-Arizona Business Council quarterly meeting, and that was very enlightening and obviously very involved with commerce and trade. I'm going to be going with a delegation from the Maricopa Association of Governments to Calgary for just 2 days next week. Very focused on tourism and commerce. and trade and industry, and there's a lot going on. Just started to realize in the last month or so between Canada and Arizona specifically. I met with EPCOR, and then they held that open house, which hopefully some of you were able to go. They were taking public comment and talking about rate changes that were in the works there. As a matter of fact, the Canadian Council is on the board there at EPCOR. Went to some ribbon cuttings. Councilman Charno and I got to go to the rededication of Golden Eagle Park, and thank you to staff and to Rachel, of course, for that wonderful masterpiece that we now have. The Mayor's Youth Council had their graduation, so that was great. We have a lot of seniors who are moving on, and they gave us their words of wisdom, and I want to thank them, and I want to thank Heather. There's obviously a lot of affection between these kids and Heather, and we have a group that'll be back. There were some freshmen and one sophomore, so they'll be back next year, and hopefully we'll get others to get involved. They do get the credit because, our high school has 24-hour volunteer credit to graduation, so that helps with that for them. So the poppies, I wanted to mention, Grady and we had the chance to meet with Bo, James, and Al Shattuck from the VFW, and they gave me all of these great poppies, which you probably know they're called buddy poppies, and they're assembled by disabled veterans. Proceeds are used exclusively for the benefit of disabled and needy veterans and the families of deceased veterans. The annual distribution of buddy poppies by the VFW has been officially recognized by leaders since 1922, and the basic purpose of the annual distribution is eloquently reflected in the desire to honor the dead by helping the living. And of course, the idea of the poppies comes from In Flanders Fields, which was probably a poem we all memorized in 7th grade. So he gave me enough for everybody up here, and I want you to know that you can donate at the grocery stores to that, or by contacting Bo James. And then on Monday, which is the 27th, that will be the Memorial Day celebration at the fountain, which starts at 9 a.m. Anybody have anything else to add? Anything trigger your memory? We next have recognition of an outgoing commissioner, somebody from our McDowell Mountain Preservation Commission. I'm going to read the kind words that people had to say about him, and then if he's here, is Stan Rudin here? Well, we have this for him for later, so let me just read what it says. It says, Stan Rudin began serving on the McDowell Mountain Preservation Commission in March of 2015. Stan contributed his time and considerable talents to the McDowell Mountain Preservation Commission. During Stan's time on the commission, he served on the Value of the Preserve Group. Stan's commitment to the preserve has helped the commission establish new data metrics, including trail usage and attendance numbers. His promotion of our trailheads has been unwavering, and we're grateful for his time and dedication. We want to thank him, and we will make sure that we get this nice proclamation to Stan next time we see him. Thank you. We appreciate all of our volunteers, of course. So I think we move on next to the presentations. Our first presentation is by Plat 208 Associates. Grady?
Yes, Mayor and Council, you remember the Vice Mayor requested that the representatives from the Plat 208 Association come here at a future meeting, and unfortunately we couldn't do this sooner. The last time we were going to do it was at the last meeting, but unfortunately the Vice Mayor wasn't able to be here. The Vice Mayor's point on this is that there's a lot of activity going on downtown, and he wanted to have these folks come up and talk a little bit about the Plat 208, which is a significant part of the downtown area, and probably the closest we have to, next to the Chamber, to being a downtown merchants association. With that, I'm going to go ahead and call on both Edward Kamens and Ron Tavella, if they can come up to the podium. These are the folks who are the shaker and movers of the association, and they're going to give you, kind of share with you some exciting, they're going to share with you some exciting branding things that they've got in the pipeline right now. And so anyways, with that, I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Dickey and council members. I'm Ron Tavella, president of Plot 208, and this is Ed Cameron. She's our treasurer at Plot 208. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. I'm going to speak about some boring operational things we have going on at Plot 208, and then Ed's going to talk a little bit about some of the exciting developments we have with some of our people there and some of our future plans. As you're aware, Plot 208 is the downtown business area here in Fountain Hills, and our objective is to provide a cohesive environment where businesses can grow and succeed. And over the past few years, we've made some accomplishments and things that I'd like to note. A major accomplishment we had was reducing our assessment dues by about 40%. To us, this was big. We've heard from our property owners. We have operational costs that we want to reduce. And so we worked with them, and we worked with programs to reduce the association dues by 40%. Another operational cost we reduced was we revised our trash program, where we got neighbors to share their trash revetments together and reduce their trash operational cost. We've seen our delinquencies reduced by a significant amount, and we created a substantial reserve for our property owners. We spent over $80,000 repaving our parking lots to keep them up to standards. We did a lot of restriping, a lot of crack and fills. We convinced a lot of the restaurants to get rid of the grease traps that were outside. They were causing spills on the curbs, spills in the parking lot, things like that. We convinced them to bring them inside and found ways to do that. We've repainted and redone all of our revetments. We've added new gates on all of our revetments. We want to keep our property, up to date and very clean. We found that we had a number of abandoned vehicles and trailers stored in our parking lots, and in some cases, our parking lots were becoming a storage facility. And so we implemented an overnight parking plan where we gave decals to businesses that wanted to park their business vehicles overnight in our parking lots. And we got rid of some of these abandoned vehicles and these abandoned trailers. We also implemented a security program. So we have security driving our parking lots over at night. We worked with the town, we worked with Grady and his team to integrate our event parking application into the town's permit process. So we got our form together so that when an event promoter applies for a permit, they're handed our application to apply for parking. And then we can talk to them in details about our licensing, our requirements, security deposit, our additional insured, and things like that. So I do want to give a thanks to Rachel. We did have a real touchy relationship situation with one event promoter, and Rachel got into the middle of it, and she got into the middle of the process, and she got all the details going, and Brady got his team involved, and everybody walked away happy. The Plot 208 walked away happy, and the promoter walked away happy, and it was a successful weekend. So I kind of just wanted to thank Rachel for that. What else? So despite some of our successes, we're still learning down here. The number of property owners, there's large vacancies downtown, and they're always looking for new ways to bring more business downtown. So Ed and I, we had too much time on our hands, and so we had a discussion on how do we bring more business downtown, how do we bring economic development downtown. If this was our mall, this was our Westerfield, how would we market it? How do we just grab more business to it? So we got into a marketing discussion. I'm going to let Ed talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So good evening to all of you.
Hi.
Please note, Ron and I are the chief troublemakers in our group and what we're trying to do. And also notice that neither one of us needs the microphone because we're both pretty loud when we speak. But we really do have an idea of where this thing could go, a vision, if you will. Now, I was asked to provide you with some pre-reading material. Hopefully you already have it. So what I didn't bring is the beginnings of what I will call our marketing plan. Ron and I both have too much time on our hands, and I'm a retired executive, and I've built several businesses. And in the process of doing that, we need to start with a branding idea for downtown. There's almost nobody who knows what a plat is unless you're in the business. So for the world outside, we need a new name. And that name, which we have now registered, is going to be Fountain Hills Square. It's an idea that we want to bring all of the businesses. We represent 140 property owners and many, many businesses in town. But please note, there are still plenty of empty spaces that need to be filled and new businesses that need to be recruited to town. So we see ourselves as an important and integral part of the community, not a standalone entity. We want to work with you. We want to work with all of the relevant entities in town to bring business to our businesses, okay? So we are working right now to develop the next phase, which is a website. And that website will be more than just pretty pictures. It will be a vehicle for every business owner in our community to be able to connect businesses, outsiders, interested parties to their own businesses. So the website itself will have a calendar of events, it will have news, it'll have all of the things that you would expect a website to have, but it will also have a connection to all of the businesses in our community. And that can exist in one of two ways. They can either have some space where we will help them develop a page for themselves, or if they're already at a level where they have their own website, a simple click of a button and now you're on their website. Okay? So I think, we're going to launch this in the fall. We think it makes no sense to launch this in the summer. We've got the skeleton already built. Some of the photography has been taken, but we are now going to start to build out the remainder of the site itself and prepare an introductory marketing communications program so that we can launch that when things get back up and running this fall. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Yes, Vice Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I just want to thank the town manager for coordinating this. I want to thank you both for coming. I had asked to have you present to our council and share what you're doing, but more importantly, what can we do for you as a town, and whether there's any type of ordinances, whether there's any type of issues that businesses that are having in your Plot 208 area that the town needs to be aware of. I'm 100% in support of businesses in this community. I love the idea and I love the vision of marketing your area better. I think that's fantastic, and anything, and I hope it's consensus, we can do to help you to promote business in your area. That's what we'd like to hear.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We are not shy to reach out to Brady and communicating with his group. As a matter of fact, we met with Michael, the new business economic developer guy, a couple of weeks back, and we shared ideas and exchanged some ideas back and forth. So we really want to make this an exchange. I think we need to work with the local businesses and with the town coming back and forth to really make this thing grow. I mean, I think we have some great resources here. We just need to put them out there.
So in follow-up, when the council talks about, and we have issues in regards to traffic, and we have issues in regards to changing traffic routes, I want to hear from your leadership as to how that is going to positively or negatively impact the downtown district.
Like the roundabouts?
Sure, and things of that nature. So I think that this dialogue is great, and I'd like to see you back more often. I don't know whether quarterly is a good idea. It's the mayor's prerogative to set the agenda, but I'd like to hear your opinions on things more.
We'd like to make ourselves available both in a formal setting like this, but also in an informal setting where we can work together with, doesn't have to be all of you, but some of you, and through Grady, to make sure that we're communicating back and forth and you're seeing the things that are going on in our space and vice versa.
We've come a long way over the last, 4 or 5 years. The downtown has come a long way. We were in pretty bad shape for a while there, but everything seems to be coming back. We're not there yet. Like I said, we still have a number of vacancies, and we're always looking to do more business, but we've come a long way the last couple years.
Excellent.
Councilman?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you. Do you and your board always envision Plateau Aid Association always being an independent type organization? I believe it's part of the deed restrictions, right, on those properties? I mean, has there ever been any discussion about town taking over or not, or if that's good or bad?
Not serious discussion, to be honest with you.
I don't know, like I said, if that's good or bad, or if that's worth pursuing or looking at.
I can only say, and we mentioned this to the gentleman here tonight, that our previous economic development director and Michael had also talked about if there were any other types of institutional type users, whether it be medical or educational, that perhaps those be locations. There's a lot of opportunities in that area, and it would also be a potential for redevelopment as well. So anyways, we've always included them in our vision for as we're trying to attract and retain companies, that is a good location for certain types of uses. And if it can be more than just some of those individual lot sizes, but actually much larger, so that you get that mass and number of people that can help support the businesses there with a daytime population, that's been in the economic development plan. So anyways, we'll continue to do that when we have prospects or other opportunities, always to include that as one of the areas that we would consider. And we'll continue to work with you on that.
And Ron and I are both business owners in town, and I'm a 23-year resident of Fountain Hills. So and I've seen all the development and changes that have gone on. I think it's important to say that we have no tie-in to keeping things the way they are. We want to take it to the next level. We want to grow the town. We want to be a part of the town. So what the infrastructure and the reporting relationship is very secondary as far as I'm concerned to working closely together. Whatever works best for the town, for the businesses, for the community at large is really what we're all about.
Okay, I understand. I guess I'm just wondering if it would be advantageous, to the town, to the businesses, to all your individual members, if you were part of the town of Fountain Hills, if we controlled the parking lots and whatever other issues you're dealing with down there, or if you feel you're better off on your own. I mean, like I said, I have no idea. I just was wondering if that's ever been discussed.
I don't know that it's been discussed, but there are a lot of things we do that you're more than welcome to do in our place if you like. Like I said, we have no vested interest in keeping things the way they are. We really want to take it to the next level. If you think about what the common ground is that the Building Owners Association runs and owns, it's the parking lots. And this other common ground, but it's not very much. So a lot of our discussions are around events that occur in town and the parking lots. And probably the best way to think about it is we're arbitrating between businesses who need to continue to function while events need to use our parking lots. That's not as simple as it sounds.
It doesn't sound simple.
Okay.
Any other questions? We appreciate you coming, and it allows the opportunity for us to ask questions because it's kind of new to some of us, and the whole entity is a little bit different. So, yeah, we're real happy.
Visit more often.
Anytime. We're available.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation from our captain. We are doing this regularly, and we welcome him to come up and report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Thanks for having us here to do the monthly presentation. One of the first things I want to talk about are some of the recent crime trends we've had here in Fountain Hills. This was on the weekend of May 6th through May 8th. It was a Friday through Monday. We experienced 15 vehicle burglaries and 3 stolen vehicles. Most of the incidents were isolated to an area near Saguaro and Shea, some residential areas off of that area. Probably contributed that it's quick access to the suspects who were involved in it. But in these 15 vehicle burglaries that we had, most of the vehicle owners left their vehicles unlocked. They believed that they didn't take the time to lock it. And a lot of them said they don't typically ever lock their vehicle just because they've done it for years. They've never had any issues. So they didn't think twice about leaving the vehicle unlocked. Others believed that they possibly had locked their vehicle, but we had no signs of forced entry on any of these vehicles. So what that tells us is these are definitely crimes where the suspects, whether it's one or a group, and we believe it's a group, is going from community, picking an area that they can get in and out of easily, and they're just going from vehicle to vehicle looking for unlocked vehicles. When they find the unlocked vehicles, and they're rummaging through to see if there's any items of value. Unfortunately, in this, we had 3 stolen firearms in these vehicles, iPads, electronic tablets, cash, gift cards. So what we're doing is we're trying to get the word out and encouraging residents to lock your vehicles, take any personal belongings inside the home. We had driver's licenses left in the vehicles that were stolen. And, that leads to potential identity theft. So the 3 stolen vehicles, and all 3 of those, the keys were left inside the vehicles. I believe most of the individuals who had the vehicle stolen either did it out of convenience, and again, never had an issue. They've done it for years, and probably had a level of comfort in doing that. So we're just trying to remind folks to lock your vehicles, take your property in, try never to secure a firearm in the vehicle overnight or when the car's vacant. But, these incidents have made it very easy for these suspects. They didn't have to break any vehicle windows. They didn't have to risk being caught by the sound of breaking glass. We're trying to get the word out. We worked with Grace with the town of Queen Creek to get that information out over the town's webpage. I also did the Chamber of Commerce in Fountain Hills invited me to do a podcast. I did the podcast. We talked about ways that residents can protect themselves and help avoid being victims of these types of crimes. And I believe that aired on the 17th of May. But I appreciate the Chamber of Commerce inviting us for that and being able to get that information out in that manner. One thing that's related to that the deputies on normal patrol try to do almost nightly is do business checks, whether it's on foot or in patrol vehicles. They'll check the doors to businesses. We've had a few business doors that were found unlocked, and we were able to get those secured. But one of the things we're seeing, and it's definitely probably more magnified because of these recent vehicle break-ins, is open garage doors. And on the 15th of May, so not long after the vehicle break-ins in that same area that we had all the vehicle break-ins, we had 5 open garage doors that we were able to make contact with the owners and have them secure their garage door at 2, 3 in the morning. So again, those are ways that just make it very easy for criminals to victimize somebody and take property and hopefully not enter into the home, but most of the time they're looking for valuables. So some of the tips, as I've already discussed for residents, is simply lock your vehicles. Don't leave personal property in there. Don't leave keys to vehicles in there. Do not leave firearms in the vehicles. And if you have to leave your vehicle unlocked, if you just out of convenience and you don't leave personal property in there, again, just don't leave personal property in there. Don't help yourself be a victim. But just reminder that they're even stealing registration to vehicles and license plate tabs. So leaving the car unlocked is just not a good idea. One of the other things I wanted to talk about briefly was dog barking issues. It's something that residents in the town have reached out to MCSO, especially when the weather's nice, when you're wanting to enjoy the outside, your patio, whenever you get the noise of dogs that are constantly barking. There's a lot of animal owners in the town, a lot of dogs. But we want to remind residents that if they have issues with dog barking incidents, they can absolutely call MCSO. We respond. The person calling it in makes the decision if they'd like contact or not by the deputy. They don't have to have contact, but either way, the deputy is going out there, they're observing whether or not they hear the noise by the animal, and what the deputies are doing are, in conjunction with the town code enforcement, are leaving a barking dog complaint notification. If the person's there, we make that contact, we give them this notification of the dog barking issue, that there was a complaint. The deputy fills out the information, whether they observed or heard the noise, and this is basically their notice that it's a warning that they've had this issue. We then give this to the administrator upstairs. They're entered into a database, and code enforcement is checking to see how frequent these are. So if there's multiple violations, that's when code enforcement can fine. It is, per town code, a class 1 misdemeanor. I don't think anyone wants to get a misdemeanor charge for a barking dog, and usually we can have successful resolution of these just by getting involved and warning the owner. Most homeowners or dog owners try to make attempts to curb that behavior. I don't think they want to go to the next step of being fined or charged. So. But it is important for those to be reported if you have those instances where we can start getting involved and get code enforcement involved, so we can help, help curb that behavior. The next thing I wanted to talk about in the monthly report is we recently did Coffee with the Cop at the McDonald's on Shea and Saguaro. They invited us after they did the remodel on Saturday, this past Saturday, from 8 to 10. We had a lot of great conversation with members of the community and folks passing through. And we were able to do some child ID fingerprinting and pass out some helpful information on fraud and identity theft. One of the things I wanted to follow up, Councilmember Spellich, that you had asked me on our last monthly presentation was the Ring, Neighbors by Ring app and the partnership with Ring. This kind of goes hand in hand with the vehicle break-ins that we're seeing, or stolen vehicles, and I'll admit, before you brought that up to me, I knew what Ring was, but I never really looked into it. So I now have, I'll put a disclaimer out here, this isn't a plug for Ring. There's other companies out there that do this, but Ring has really taken the lead on this. I don't have a Ring camera, but I now have the app after doing the research, and I get notifications in a 7-mile radius of my home when people who do have a Ring have video of people coming on the porch or anything suspicious. They post it to Ring, and any neighbor, you get notifications that it's there. So it's a valuable tool for someone, just a resident, to see what's going on in their neighborhood. It's pretty shocking. I didn't realize we had so many people going around the neighborhood at 2 in the morning. But it's one of those things where it's a great tool for law enforcement. Ring has developed a partnership with local law enforcement. It makes it easy for law enforcement. If we have an issue in a particular area, we can draw a map around that area. Ring then gives us any videos or data in that area, comments that people make. There's a lot of value in those comments of people talking back and forth, whether or not they reported it. So I did some checking with our agency to see what type of conversations we've had or partnership attempts with Ring, and it's in the process. They've come out to our agency a couple times. My chief relayed to me that it's in the process of being written up so that we have this agreement with them, and once that happens, I think we should get some marketing material or some material that we're able to push out to residents in those areas that we serve. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that was something that I was shocked that I wasn't aware of, and I think it's a great tool that people can use. So, and I had follow-up for Councilman Magazine, but I'll do that on the next one since he's not here, or follow up with them through email with the question he had. So that's all I have for the monthly presentation, unless there's questions from anybody.
Questions? Councilman Spellich?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Captain. Do you have any idea what the time would be for us to get a cooperative agreement with Ring so that we can start telling the residents that, because that could have very much helped in this rash of car burglaries. Second question is are you able to release any suspect information or be on the lookout vehicles that we could all, that Bob Burns could put in the newspaper that might, because as you know, they usually use the same vehicle when they're out stealing. And then to even have to address careless ownership of a firearm by leaving it unattended in a vehicle, just to let the residents know a lot of those guns are used to commit homicides as well as armed robberies and everything. It's absolutely ludicrous that a responsible gun owner would ever leave a weapon in a vehicle. It makes no sense. So basically, that's my rant, but very interested in getting the Ring program off the ground, and numerous residents, after we spoke about that, have talked to me about, so do you have any idea?
I unfortunately don't have a timetable at this time. I did talk to my chief today before the meeting to see if we did have one that I could share. I will definitely, they know it's an urgent matter, especially with, we're not the only community, Fountain Hills, that had this string of burglaries with vehicles. Scottsdale, Cave Creek, Anthem, they all had similar incidents. So I'll work on getting a timetable on that and trying to put the pressure on them to make this happen, whether it's the delay is us or them to get it done. Going back to your other point about whether there's information, suspect information. So what I can tell you is that we took many items and processed them for DNA and fingerprints. The DPS crime lab, that process can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months, depending on how busy they are. We have gotten a couple of hits back on fingerprints that detectives are currently working. There was a resident who had the wherewithal to record and call in to MCSO something that she saw that was very suspicious, and she did an amazing job. She gave us some really great tools. There was some frustration in the community, I understand, and had some responses to about the delay in response time. There was a vehicle that was seen in the area, broad daylight, 9:30 in the morning. It was a truck that was parked, and there was an individual in the truck. She saw some suspicious activity in the truck. Called that in to MCSO after observing that for about a half hour. We were working an injury accident on Saguaro and El Lago that tied up all of our units, and we weren't able to get there until it was an hour and 26 minutes. I know there was some back and forth about it being 3 hours, but it was an hour and 26 minutes based on that injury accident taking priority. This vehicle that was there, she ended up calling back MCSO and letting us know before the deputy got there that another vehicle had pulled up to it, and they had switched over some bags, duffel bags that likely contained property in it, and then they wiped down that vehicle and took off in the new vehicle. It ended up being one of our stolen vehicles. The vehicle they were in was a stolen vehicle out of Phoenix, and the vehicle they got into was a brand new stolen vehicle from the area that had the keys in it. So she had very good footage. She recorded it with her phone, very clear. So we have those leads to work on at this time, and we're working with other agencies to share that information to see if we get any leads. I hope that helps a little bit. But specific suspect information, one black male individual, two white male individuals, and one female individual. But again, just a reminder, if you see something suspicious that's very odd at 9:30, they probably assume people are working, and there probably are a great number of people that were. But for them to do that and be that brazen, the call was great. And if we wouldn't have had circumstances, potentially we make an arrest on those suspects. So it's unfortunate we missed them. But any other comments or questions?
Councilman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. There was a drug take-back day a couple of weeks ago. It was, subsequent to our last report, and I don't have the poundage, but I know we took in quite a haul between the Drug Coalition, the Sheriff's Office, kind of manning the outside here. So just want to mention that. And then secondly, a couple of months ago, we discussed the issue of communications with the newspaper and getting reports out and that kind of thing. And obviously, since that time, the amount of coverage has picked up in the paper, and I assume that's you working with the newspaper and releasing more information. So I just want to thank you for that, because that is a good public service, and people were asking about that. So
I appreciate that. If I can just comment on that. I have the numbers. We did have 92.2 pounds of prescription medication dropped off that day, which is huge. We have the drop-off here that people can access every hour that the town's open. And usually per month we collect anywhere from 50 to 70 pounds. So we collected 92 pounds in the one day in the 5-hour window. So with the help of the coalition and everybody took part, the DA, we were able to take a lot off the road. I did want to comment, I apologize, I forgot that part of it that you had asked me with working with Bob with the Fountain Hills Times. Yes, we are, I meet with Bob weekly. I provide him some synopsises of incidents that occurred during that week, and I try to pick out the ones that maybe residents would be interested in, or Bob would, based on communication. But I think we've developed a pretty good line of communication. Bob will text me or call me or email me, and I'll release to him what I can, and then we meet weekly, and we're trying to be a little bit more, give people a little bit more. And Bob's been great at the Fountain Hills Times of putting information out when we have the break-ins and any other public issues that come up that we're able to get out. So it's a really good tool, and appreciate the emphasis of the importance of that by the council. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilman, did you have something? Thank you so much, Captain. I'm glad you mentioned that, Councilman, because that is something that we talk about all the time, communication in that podcast. I mean, it was just out there, dealing with challenging questions and situations, and your willingness to do that. We really appreciate it. And I know that I've reached out to you even in the last week with some constituent issues, and that you were very quick to respond. And just again, and I don't know that it's totally up and running yet, but we had that text-a-tip, and now it's called P3. I don't think it's been totally rolled out in as a campaign or anything yet, but that is another tool that we can use to report, and I believe it can be anonymous. Is that right?
That is correct. So the P3, it is up and running. They're still working on the marketing material. We're working with the Drug Coalition. They're very interested in getting that out quickly, and Shelley Mowry with the coalition has been very big on trying to push that, and she's been a help because it's helped put that fire under those folks that are doing that. But yes, the P3 app, it's a smartphone app. If you download that, you can remain anonymous and put tips in there. I would just encourage, it's a little different than text-a-tip. Text-a-tip went straight to the sergeant working, so there is a little bit of a difference in this new system. My suggestion would just be, you can always call our non-emergency line or 911 and remain anonymous the same way that you could through the text. So if you see something, you absolutely can go through the P3 app. There is a little bit of delay in that getting to the sheriff's office currently until we get something, bugs worked out of that or whatever. So I would just always recommend that if somebody sees something and it's suspicious right then and there, you can remain completely anonymous by calling MCSO non-emergency line or 911.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next presentation is going to be about intersection and pedestrian safety, and then, excuse me, ma'am, and then when we're done with that, we'll have some people come up and who have some items that they want to talk about that kind of span both of those presentations, and we'll do that before we get to the speaker cards. Pardon me?
We can't hear the speakers.
You can't hear the speakers? Okay, thank you. We'll make sure they put it right up to their mouths. So next we're going to have the discussion about the intersection subcommittee and some of the things that we've done and some of the things we plan to do. Grady?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, as you know, last year we had some very tragic situations with pedestrians either sustaining very serious injuries by vehicular accidents or even death. And the council has taken this matter very seriously to the point where they formed a subcommittee, and the subcommittee met as recent as back in March. And so what we're going to do tonight is go over some of the items that we've implemented to date to help improve both vehicular and pedestrian safety, but also talk about things that are currently in progress and then also some of the future projects that we're going to be addressing to help make Fountain Hills a much safer place. With us tonight, unfortunately, our Public Works Director, who had planned on being here tonight, had a family emergency and is in New Mexico, unfortunately. So he's not able to be with us. But we do have his number 2, Jeff Pierce. He is the street superintendent, and he's going to go through the presentation with you tonight. And we'd be happy to answer any questions during the presentation or following. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Good
Hi.
evening, Mayor. Hello. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. My name is Jeff Pierce. I am the street superintendent. This PowerPoint presentation basically is about intersection and pedestrian safety improvements the town has currently conducted, completed, and are future looking at. A little background. Due to major vehicle accidents involving death and injuries to pedestrians, a council subcommittee was formed to study and recommend measures to improve pedestrian and traffic safety. A council subcommittee was consisted of Mayor Dickey, Councilmember Brown, and Councilmember LaCrone. Technical support staff to the subcommittee consisted of the captain of MCSO, the Public Works Director, and also the town manager. Council subcommittee met on March 19th, 2019, and made a number of recommendations to improve safety. These are recent improvements that staff and contractors have completed throughout the town. Wrong-way driver awareness measures on Palisades Boulevard. We had additional wrong-way and do not enter signage added. We refreshed the existing traffic markings with highly reflective thermoplastic markings in the roadway. And we also added RPMs to that, or raised pavement markings, for better visibility to motorists.
Jeff, can you just briefly explain what thermoplastic is versus the conventional paint striping?
Thermoplastic is a material that is put down at a thicker density to paint. It holds a greater retroreflectivity due to the glass beads that are inputted in that when it goes down through the gun, through the striper. So it lasts about 5 years to every year we have to paint. You can apply that, but once again, when the thickness gets too great, we have to grind that off and start all over, but we do get a longer lifespan out of that. We also had the installation of a primary and secondary limit line, which were 24 inches wide. This helped motorists stop where they were supposed to stop and then not exceed into Palisades. After we refreshed that section, we also refreshed arterials on long and short line traffic markings. A lot of these arterial streets throughout town were completed with the thermoplastic material and had raised pavement markers added. Some of these streets included Palisades, Fountain Hills Boulevard, Avenue of the Fountains, and El Lago Boulevard. Recently, Avenue of the Fountains from La Montana to Saguaro was narrowed with a yellow paint stripe to prevent vehicles from creating a second lane. We also had the crosswalks refreshened on both arterial and residential streets with the addition of continental bars, or some people like piano keys, at Palisades, at Hampstead, and at Golden Eagle. The installation of curb opening ramps of Avenue of the Fountains for ADA compliance. Modified sidewalk ramps following DOJ standards were implemented. The installation of truncated domes also were found on footpaths, stairs, and intersections to help assist pedestrians who are visually impaired. Staff also had all ADA parking stalls refreshed with new paint and new signage. We mill and overlaid some of the arterial intersection ADA ramps. Basically, we went to Palisades and Fountain Hills Boulevard and El Lago and Fountain Hills Boulevard, and we removed and replaced the asphalt around all ADA ramps, which left potential hazards for the ingress and egress of the ADA travel. This caused a very rough entering of the ramp or exiting for ADA requirements. Right now, these are some of the improvements that will be underway. These pictures represent the roundabout, the Verde River closure, a light post relocation on the avenue, and also the pedestrian crossing at Hampstead at Palisades. Currently at Palisades and Hampstead, we had the audible push button indicators installed. This allows an audible sound when the button is pushed. We are also working on and with the contractor to install a double strobe, alerting pedestrians that yellow warning lights have been activated for oncoming motorists and to proceed with caution when crossing. Basically, right now, when you push the button, you really don't know if those lights are flashing or not. So we want to give some sort of indication to the pedestrian as when they do push that button, along with the audible noise, you can also tell when those beacons are flashing, the lights are also on. We are also extending the sidewalk from Hampstead Drive to Golden Eagle to encourage pedestrians to go to Golden Eagle crosswalk rather than a mid-street crossing at Hampstead. We also have consideration of 3D paint striping at this location and other critical crosswalks to be more visible to the motorists. Right now, the Fountain Hills Boulevard shoulder widening project is in full effect. Widening of the Fountain Hills Boulevard will extend the shoulder by nearly 10 feet on each side. The curb and gutter design will also provide a greater distance to motorists and safer access for bicyclists on Fountain Hills Boulevard. We currently have median improvements in front of the post office on Avenue of the Fountains. This work is underway on improving the ingress and egress out of the post office and entrance. The relocation of the existing light pole in front of Sofrita's restaurant to meet ADA compliance. Right now, we have the removal and relocation of an existing light impeding the sidewalk right away. We have to conform to DOJ standards and fall into compliance with all ADA specifications when we do move this. We have to remove, extend, and replace existing electrical and pavers, and we are currently working with a contractor to provide a scope to have this completely done. This is actually kind of a tricky situation. In order for us not to disturb the patrons at the restaurant, we have to have specialty equipment come in to actually lift the light post in a safe manner compared to performing this work with some sort of heavy equipment that we have. So we are working with the contractor on that. The Avenue of the Fountain and La Montana Roundabout, an assessment study and concept drawing has been completed, and we have roundabouts have been proven safer and more efficient than other types of circular intersections. The Avenue of the Fountains and Verde River intersection connection, this is where the concept drawing has been completed so that both the linear park plazas connect together with no vehicle access and need for pedestrians to cross the street to continue walking down either end of the park. This is for future improvements. As you can see on your right-hand side over here, we do have a demonstration of what the first topic is. This is actually a 36 by 36 inch stop sign that is a diamond gray material, which we were asked to get a demonstration of for you. This sign is actually solar powered from the battery backup, and stays constantly flashing. Intersections included are La Montana and Palisades, Saguaro Boulevard at Avenue of the Fountains, Palisades at Golden Eagle, Fountain Hills Boulevard at Ironwood, and Fountain Hills Boulevard at Inca. These signs would be on the far side and on the near side in the median, so we would have two of these in each direction. This sign is of legal size according to the MUTCD standards that we follow. It needs to be 36 inches on a multi-lane highway. These are 24 hours a day, 365 days a year operational blinking lights. We also are adding rumble strip reflectors in strategic locations to warn motorists in approaching intersections.
Mayor and Council, just want to let you know too, we have these on order. There are about 6 companies that all the Valley cities really order these from, and they're on back order due to all the cities are doing this. If you drive around the valley, you see a lot of these, and that's because these have really become very in vogue right now because they are very effective. And then with the solar keeping it going 24 hours, that's going to be very effective. And then did you want to explain what rumble strips are?
Rumble strips are raised pavement markers strategically located in the lane lines, alerting motorists of upcoming stops or so. We strategically place them horizontally in the lane line, and they make a rumble noise when the driver is approaching them and hits them. And this alerts the driver, usually an approaching stop is near.
So we're thinking that great location would be on Saguaro, right at the Avenue of the Fountains. Cars, obviously, people are gawking as they're looking at the fountain or the park or the lake, or when we have events going on in the park. So as they're approaching the intersection, that's going to grab their attention. We're also, as you recall, 2 meetings ago, we had a gentleman named Mr. Lewis that spoke under call to the public about Westby. And this would be something we're going to look at putting at Westby, and then also some of these crossing features where we have the ability to have people cross and have some get the driver's attention that this is a crosswalk, an active crosswalk. So I'll turn it back to Mr. Pierce.
We also have safe routes to school, grant-funded safe walking paths for students to walk to and from school. We are currently in preparing an agreement with the Fountain Hills Unified School District. The town-wide sidewalk infill program. Town budgets $100,000 annually to construct new sidewalks for safer connectivity between existing sidewalks and intersections. Currently, the council subcommittee recommended a $200,000 annual. That would be a $100,000 increase to this program. Town engineer has identified sidewalk priorities based on evaluation of traffic and pedestrian accidents, logical points of connectivity, and highest volume of pedestrians. This is the improvements with enforcement. MCO traffic enforcement. We've all seen increased visibility of officers on the street enforcing traffic laws, especially on Saguaro. We also have deployment of the town-owned speed trailer on arterial and residential streets requested by MCSO and residents. Town staff deploys this trailer when a resident calls concerned about speeding, and we gather the data. We usually put it out for 4 to 5 days, and we gather the data and print it out and see exactly what the speeds are, and if we do need to send this to MCSO for further enforcement. We also have a zero tolerance enforcement in school zones that they do. Recommendations: continue evaluating traffic and accident data to determine other potential safety solutions. Evaluate the effectiveness and implementation of traffic and pedestrian improvements and make refinements. Convene to council subcommittee semi-annually to review progress and safety solutions, and to continue to take recommendations from council subcommittee to town council for discussion and possible action. Questions?
Thank you. First, I want to say that we really appreciate you, Jeff, coming in and putting this together. And since it was kind of a emergency situation, it wasn't in the packet, but hopefully we can get this in the packet so that everybody would have a chance to look at it a little bit closer and maybe comment if they'd like. Does anybody have any questions? Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. Jeff, great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I think you followed up on our recommendations, and I'm glad to see it happening. How long will the post office, the work in front of the post office, have the lanes choked down, shut off, to where you can't get into and out of the post office as we usually do?
We're actually hoping that work is completed by the end of next week.
1 week, outstanding.
Yes.
So how long do you anticipate having the Fountain Hills Boulevard widening take?
Currently, that is under Director Weldy's inspection. He's more up to date with that information. I know they are working together on that as I've been overseeing the pavement management portion of this.
So I guess the question would be, do you think we will have it pretty well put together before the snowbirds come back to town?
I believe it would probably be almost completed just before or just after the fiscal year.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? At this point, I'd like to ask, we have some speakers that would like to speak to some issues that not only were covered by Jeff, but also by Captain Kratzer. So rather than having that be a call to the public, they can, since these are technically on the agenda, they could come up now. So if, Angela, if you don't mind, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Looks like Virgil Fanning.
First off, I'd like to thank the lady that said they can't hear. You guys are close to microphones. Your volume's great. This is not so great. And I'm getting up here too. I want to be heard. I mean, the size of this crowd, I want to let you know that I'm not going to announce my run for Democrat president. I'm not going to. All right, so now, El Lago, on the traffic thing. You mentioned something about the bumper, to let you know you're approaching a intersection. El Lago has, I live on that street, so I know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of speeding going on in there. It used to be signs that no trucks allowed. I don't know what happened to that, but anyway, El Lago needs to be addressed either with speed bumps or law enforcement to address the speeding that goes on there. So that's what I'm here for. And the other thing, I see that when I filled out the sign, we got a 3-minute limit. So if you got a bucket of rocks, bring them out before you start throwing so I know my time's up. The only thing other than the El Lago that I'd like to address is there was, anyway, what I wanted to say, there was an idea in the paper that the Chamber of Commerce makes a lot of money off of these two fairs. These two gentlemen that were here have a pretty active program for the businesses and things. I think maybe they could replace the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know that that's any of your jurisdiction, but there's something that needs to be addressed. They're making a ton of money, and I'm not too sure that there's a lot of businesses in town that feel they're doing a good job for the businesses. Now, I don't think what I said is going to change anybody's mind. You're not going to do anything, but I wanted to voice my opinion on that. And thank you very much for the time. You're a bunch of sweethearts.
Thank you. I think we have a couple on the pedestrian or public safety.
Yes. Dan Barrett.
Hi.
Hi, Mayor and City Council. My name's Dan Barrett, and I'm been a resident of Fountain Hills for 25 years, the last 8 being full-time. And I'm here to talk about the intersection of La Montana and Saguaro. Within the last year, there's been 3 accidents there, 2 with injuries and 1 that I assisted on. It's really the only intersection on Saguaro between El Lago and Grande that does not have a 4-way stop sign or a signal. It's a tough intersection. It's also based on Saguaro. If you're going south on Saguaro, they're coming up a hill, and they're in a blind spot. You just can't see them. All of a sudden, the traffic's on you when you're trying to cross about an intersection that seems like about 50 yards wide with both lanes of traffic. So that's my concern for tonight.
Thank you.
So I have, thanks.
Mayor and Council, I'll get with the town engineer, and we'll look at the traffic stats, or excuse me, accident stats there, and we'll come back with information for you at a later date.
Thank you.
Jan Parisian.
Hi.
Hi there. I'm Jan Parisian, and I live in Fountain Hills, and I'm addressing 3 issues. First is the speeding on El Lago, specifically the stretch between Echo Hill and Fountain Hills Boulevard. Daily, at all times of day and night, cars are exceeding the speed limit in both directions. I don't have a radar gun, but I know the difference between 30 miles an hour and 50 to 60 miles an hour. My concern is the accidents waiting to happen, especially to walkers with or without dogs. A number of us neighbors posted signs that read, "Please slow down." It may have had a temporary effect, but I've seen no long-term difference. Police presence has been minimal or non-existent. I want to know what measures you will take to fix this problem. Please consider traffic signs, stop signs in both directions, not necessarily those, but those are cool, on El Lago at Cavern, on El Lago at Mimosa, and at El Lago on Mountain View. Also consider speed bumps and these rumble strips they just talked about. One resident today has submitted written comments suggesting 8 possible solutions. This is a residential street that has become a thoroughfare. Please, I'm asking you to do something. Secondly, a very brief comment about the intersection right outside this building. I've seen many examples of erratic driving, including my having had 2 near misses. I think drivers are confused on what to do when crossing, and I see that you're talking about a roundabout, and I fully endorse it. Third is the issue of barking dogs. There are several in my neighborhood. My house backs on a wash, and the worst are 2 barkers at one house across from me. They bark on and off all day, especially at morning walkers, and multiple times during the night for whatever reason. They are not confined at night. Over 6 years, I have called the sheriff many times, mostly late into the night. They are always responsive, but when someone arrives, the dogs have stopped barking, usually. Often, an officer will call me after the non-productive visit to update me. I started to keep a log of when and how many seconds or minutes the dogs barked, but I realized it could be challenged as a fabrication, so I stopped doing that. My neighbors and I are tired of this. We want to enjoy our homes in peace. I wish there was a way to have quicker response by the sheriff. Currently, I'm working with an officer on monitoring my situation. I just wanted you to know you have frustrated residents who need your leadership in improving the enforcement of the barking dog ordinance. I'm here with a few of my neighbors who share my concerns. Will you raise your hands, those of you on El Lago? Look at that. Also, some folks left for the summer, and I brought their written comments and I turned them in. So I thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any else on this issue?
I just wanted to just comment, thank you for reporting. I know when the mayor brought this to our attention last week, I believe the captain either reached out to you or one of his deputies did. So we wanted to get ahead of this before tonight's meeting, so that happened, and we'll continue to work with you on this. As you know, the big challenge with barking dogs is trying to catch them in the act of barking, and that's what the sheriff's deputies frequently have a difficult time doing. The other items I'll go ahead and work with the staff on based on your concerns that you expressed tonight.
Thank you. Nancy Merritt.
Hello,
Hi.
My name is Nancy Merritt, and I'm up here basically for the same reason that Jan Parisian was up here. Anyone who knows me knows that I absolutely adore animals. I even volunteer for Liberty Wildlife in Phoenix, fielding calls to rescue all types of wildlife. I'm not going to use my 3 minutes to have you listen to 4 minutes of the reason I am here, but I will let you listen to just a moment, if I can get it, of the reason that I'm here. Now, these barking happen at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. Now, and I won't bore you with the rest. I know that there are dogs that bark constantly, and we deal with that. But the fact, and I have gone to our neighbor's house, introduced ourselves 4 years ago, but it's never done any good. The problem is that there's no other dogs barking at 2 and 4 in the morning. These dogs are barking because the owner leaves the doggy door open. And that basically is what I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
They should have a curfew.
And any others?
Yes, Paul Regello.
Hi.
Hello. Madam Mayor, Council, thank you for hearing me. I am also a resident of El Lago, and just to reiterate that speeding is quite endemic to that particular street. I walk my dog that does not bark twice a day up and down that street, and people often go so fast around those turns that they drift into the shoulder, and you've got to like take your dog and kind of jump out of the way because they're occupying the space where a pedestrian would be occupying. I've seen this occur to other pedestrians. It happens to me on a regular basis, and it's just not safe. And furthermore, when someone does obey the speed limit, I have often witnessed people passing them in the median. It has happened to me on many occasions, and I witness it quite frequently when I walk my dog. And then lastly, to reiterate what another gentleman said, there are signs that say no large vehicles or trucks. I don't think they're observed because I've seen large trucks, and we're not talking garbage trucks here or furniture delivery trucks, we're talking like semi-tractor trailers going up and down the street. And it must have an impact on the street because there's potholes and things like that. I don't think it's intended to have this level of heavy equipment traveling on a regular basis. So if there's anything that can be done to rectify this, I know our neighboring city, Scottsdale, when they have busy streets that are residential, they'll often put in stop signs, they'll put in other traffic calming measures, which would be cement median to prevent people from passing, or speed bumps. I know that those things can be expensive, but at the very least, perhaps a stop sign or two on Cavern or Mimosa to help quell the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Again, we're going to be evaluating, based on the feedback we've had from the residents tonight, these locations. And we do have an actual traffic calming program. Now, what's interesting, just to let everyone know, El Lago is what would be considered a collector street. And so it actually moves traffic. It's not a traditional, what I would call a neighborhood street or a local street. And so it's really taking people basically from either Saguaro or from La Montana over to Palisades. And so we're going to have to take basically that into consideration when we look at how we can do some traffic calming. But we will definitely look at how we can do this where we can satisfy the residents' needs, but also ensure that we don't impede traffic. So it's a delicate balance, but we're going to take a look at this and see how we can manage this. Thank you.
Some of the things we talked about, Grady, is there are some streets that are too wide, basically, in Fountain Hills that they become that way where you don't know if it's just one lane or two, and then people are passing and doing that. I live right on El Lago, too, so I know exactly what you're talking about, the speeding. So that was something that I think Justin had been looking at, the idea of maybe we could do that, even if we narrowed them with striping. The other thing is, which, you know, I know everybody hates cameras, but sometimes I think about when you go to Paradise Valley and you go on Lincoln or Tatum, you know, you just set that speed control because you know it's just you're going to get caught. So it's just something to put out there, you know, or lowering speed limits too. I know we talked a little bit about that. So some of those areas we might look at doing those things. It's obviously a very important issue. Do we have more on this issue?
Yes. The next speaker is Tony Erdy.
Hi.
Good evening. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I am also from El Lago. Last year on October 16th, I went to talk to the police here about if there's anything that could be done about the speeding. They sent me upstairs to talk to Randy Harrell about speed bumps, stop signs, etc. Okay? I went up there and he says, I don't believe that we've ever put a machine out there. Okay, so I said, what do the machines do? And he says, they register what goes over it, how many go over it, and what the speed is when they go over it, supposedly. So it was out for 4 days. I waited 3 weeks to get an answer, and they said, I'm sorry, but the volume doesn't warrant doing anything there. Number two, the average speed was 37 miles an hour. As far as I'm concerned, that's idling down that street. I may not know what the volume is because I'm not there to count, but I see people going by there and it's a lot more than 37 miles an hour. And through the grapevine, I heard, Madam Mayor, that you live on Mimosa. Now, how many times have you come up to El Lago to wait for a car to go by? You think he's going 37 miles an hour? If I had known that was going to be the Indy 500, I would have never moved there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Edward Bubak.
Hi.
My name is Edward Bubak. You can guess where I live. For 29 years, we've enjoyed Fountain Hills, and all that time has been on El Lago. I have had connections with your law enforcement here at the formative time of the city, and a little bit later when Judge Shub started the court system. A wonderful man, and I had the privilege and the honor to be a judge here also on the magistrate court, and we had some traffic problems, but I don't think anything like we're experiencing, at least on El Lago Boulevard. And so I want to, first thing I'll say is, these girls and the guys, they took my speech. And so you'll be relieved to know that I won't use my entire 3 minutes, but I will say it's a very serious matter, and we're talking about people's lives. And we love the Fountain Hills Boulevard area, and as my fellow neighbors have pointed out, we need your help. And I'm optimistic after seeing what I've seen tonight and listened to you people and your presentations. I know you'll help us. We appreciate it. And we also appreciate what you guys go through in your jobs. It's quite a bit of work, and we appreciate it. And my dinger just went off. The 3 minutes is up, and thank you very much.
Thank you. You have a minute left. Well, I'm glad that that you were here, that you were expressing yourselves about these neighborhoods. Does anybody have anything they would like to say up here? Oh, I'm sorry.
One more.
Sorry about that.
No, thank you. Greg Dudash.
Is this about this? Are you for call to the public or for this issue? Call to public. Okay. So could we hold off for just a second? I appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner. So there are obviously a lot of, it's not even just on El Lago, but I'm glad because you're making the point, and you heard our captain before, and the increase in enforcement and visibility and all the physical things we're trying to do, and all the other items like the stop signs and the rumbles and the striping and everything, duly noted and experienced. And we're on it. You know, these things don't happen in a day, and so some things might be a little cost prohibitive, but others I think we can do right away, and you can see that we have. We take it very seriously, and more to come, and please feel free to always come to us. Yes, sir?
I just want to say, is there something that we should do personally without involving the town? I mean, if it's a matter of, money, I mean, is it something the neighbors want to do?
Well, why don't we, we'll
So
be in-
it's really,
I appreciate that,
It's
really.
a partnership really between the neighbors and the town. The streets and right-of-way are the town's responsibility. The police powers to patrol it and manage it. So, but certainly asking for, MCSO to do that. I mean, obviously you're here tonight, so we don't need to do that. But asking if you see, if you even see a license plate of a car that seems to be one that is driving recklessly or anything like that, it's really up to you to be the eyes and ears of the town.
I take a picture of that license plate. It's his word against mine.
I understand that, but they can certainly have a conversation with the individual and let them know that they're aware of that individual doing that. So that's how that works. So anyways, we appreciate all that you're doing tonight and that you came on this topic. And I can assure you that we're going to continue to have MCSO be involved on the enforcement. We're going to take a look at it internally and see what we can do to either do some traffic calming or seeing what we can do to help relieve the issues you guys have reported tonight. So thank you.
And Grady, just to make sure, the thing about the no through trucks, I'm not, maybe we could check on that.
I took that note, but that's not a truck route through there, so I'm going to find out what's happened. I wouldn't be surprised that maybe some of the truck drivers have removed those signs, but that's not a designated truck traffic route. So we're going to go ahead and look into that, and the staff has taken notes as well as I tonight. So I think you can probably count on signs being back up in the near future to address that part of it. So.
And can I ask you, when you do the, whatever the study is to check on La Montana and Saguaro, could we check Mountainside and Palisades also? That's another one with a hill and a lot of visibility issues.
We did. I do know for a fact that when we were getting, we had a neighbor in your development last year, so we did measure, I believe it was Mountainside, because there were some concerns about speeding, so we had the traffic tubes a year ago to measure both traffic volume and speed. But we'll take a look at those numbers, and if we need to redo that again, certainly we haven't done Mimosa. Well, I guess we have, but I don't know what the facts were, so we'll take a look at that. Well, let me just explain so we understand we're on the same page here. So the town council years ago passed what's called a traffic calming policy. And what it is, it pretty much has to meet a certain threshold in order to have certain traffic calming measures taken. Now, we're talking about neighborhood streets, not necessarily an arterial or a collector street as El Lago is, okay? And so basically this has criteria specifically spelled out in this policy that outlines when it is appropriate, when it does meet warrants, and when it doesn't. And so it's designed by a traffic engineer to help us have proper criteria before we put any traffic calming, and it takes the whole neighborhood to actually buy into that before any improvements would take place. Being that this is an arterial we're talking about, that's slightly different than what I just outlined. And so we're going to take a look at this and see what we can do to help you guys, okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
We're out of order.
I'm sorry? Yeah, we don't, I'm sorry, but we can't kind of go back and forth like this, but like I said, you heard, and anything you have that you feel you didn't get a chance to say, please call any one of us or email us, and we'll be happy to respond if that's okay. Thank you. Yeah, I know, I was getting the high sign a little bit, so yeah, next is a call to the public, and these are folks that want to speak to issues that aren't on the agenda. Angela?
Thank you, Mayor. Greg Dudash.
Welcome, board member.
Feels like deja vu all over again. Hi, Greg Dudash. I'm the chairman of the Fountain Hills Sanitary District, and I want to give a quick update on the well vault project. When I say well vault, most people go, what's that? It's a control room. We have underground aquifer storage and recovery facilities in the park. Our control rooms are now underground, and they're not doing well, so we decided to put them above grade. And to make that acceptable, we've added restrooms to them. So we call it, if I say the restroom project, you know what I'm talking about. Those are going to be, we've already started working on that. Fencing will go up around the week of June 3rd. We anticipate, there's two going on. The one to the west of the, let's see, I can visualize this in my head. It's one to the west of the parking lot on Panorama. Will be done around the beginning of October. The one by the amphitheater a few weeks after that. We'll have a ribbon cutting, hopefully. And there was some talk about the cost of that. And I believe that Councilman Spielich said that your favorite restroom was the Bellagio, and you wanted to compare ours. I am going to give you the right of first use. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. No pressure, 5 minutes, whatever it takes, come back out and report to us. I've been working with Mayor Dickey, and it has been a pleasure working with her. She's dedicated, she's energetic, she embodies community values, and I appreciate that quite a bit. If you think of community values, the vision statement for Fountain Hills is we want to work together to make this a better town, make it better for everyone here, which is what we're doing at the Sanitary District. So, having said that, all is not sweetness and light. Occasionally you'll have forces of negativity that will come up, and they will attack people. When the mayor is attacked, I pay attention to that. When the town council here is attacked, I pay attention to that. When the school board people are attacked, I pay attention to that. When the board members of the sanitary district are attacked, I pay particular attention to that one. This is what I want to say. I've noticed a malevolent force in the community. It's negative, it's hostile. It's a toxic narcissism that seeks to destroy instead of uplifting. If you remember what the pastor said about kindness and respect at the beginning of this meeting, this is the opposite of that. And I've seen you people attacked, we've been attacked, and I don't think that that embraces Fountain Hills values. I really do not. We need to speak up against it. Councilman Magazine did have an opportunity. He made a brief comment a few months back, and I think that was appreciated. I would like to suggest to you, if somebody attacks you personally, attacks your integrity, attacks your honesty as council members, you can respond to that. You can say, thank you, but that's BS, okay? Along that. Bottom line, I think it's just we need to preserve these values and we need to defend against them. And I just hope that we're all on the same page. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Are there any other speaker cards?
No.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate your participation. Next, we have our consent agenda. Unless,
Mayor,
excuse me, would you like to take something off?
there was a couple of people, I think, that did want to speak. Maybe they don't know the process, but maybe we can.
Is there anybody here that would like to speak but didn't fill out a speaker card and would like to now?
Different topic. I guess it's a different topic when we get to people speak on it. Is that correct?
If it's on the agenda?
Yeah.
Yes, you still, if you could fill out a card to that agenda item and then give it to Angela, that way we have it a record and. Oh, okay. Excuse me.
There's a number of people here that want to speak in regards to when the town manager reports. So that is something that is not something you're going to call public. So they would speak.
You mean to the last agenda items?
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, they can speak when we get to that. If it's on the agenda, they can speak when it gets to that. Councilman, Vice Mayor, why don't you tell me what you like and see what we can do.
There's a number of people here that we're going to speak to the council discussion direction to staff, which would not normally be something I would think that you'd have a call to public on. So I would think that this would be the appropriate time for them to speak on any topic at the call to public.
Actually, the vice mayor normally would be correct in this situation if we didn't have this actually agendized, but it's agendized. And so after discussing this item, and the council has the opportunity to discuss it, then the mayor can certainly call on anybody to speak on that item. So normally when we don't have an item, like normally where it just says direction of the town manager and there's nothing listed, you're absolutely correct. The public really cannot talk about that. But the way it's agendized, the public can. And we did that purposely.
They've been noticed since it's on the agenda. Yes. So if they would like us to be able to respond, it's better to discuss it when we get to the agenda item. Otherwise, call to public is basically, they just say what we can't say anything back. So if you don't mind, we could wait till we get to the agenda item, if that's okay. All right? So we have the consent agenda. Does anybody want to take anything off the consent agenda? Can we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. Our first item on the regular agenda is a public hearing for a special use permit about a wireless antenna. So should I wait for the report and then call it the hearing, or?
I would probably just consider maybe opening the hearing now. Staff will give the presentation
The hearing is
as part of
open
that.
regarding this item. Thank you.
And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Marissa Moore. She's our senior planner, and she's the staff person that's worked very closely on this particular matter.
Thank you.
Ms. Moore.
I forgot to put this in presentation mode. Apologize. Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. As was stated before you is a request to install a wireless communication facility at 13...
Marissa, could you just speak a little closer? Thank you.
Sorry, I was told this before. It's kind of awkward speaking right next to it like this. Okay. A Verizon communication facility at 13300 North Eagle Ridge Drive. The request is to install a 40-foot tall faux saguaro, and it would be at the entrance to the Adero Canyon subdivision. At that entrance is also it's kind of a welcome center, I suppose. Also, we are adding to this request, it was brought up just prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, in addition to the permanent faux saguaro, the applicant is requesting to install a temporary wireless facility called a COW, a cell on wheels, until the permanent facility is up and running. The reason that a special use permit is required for these two items is it doesn't meet the criteria set forth in the zoning ordinance. It is within 300 feet of residential zoning district. It exceeds the maximum building height, which is 25 feet in the zone that it's in, and it does not meet fall distance. So location map here. This is a little bit older aerial. Some of these have been developed though, but this is where it would be located. So here's Copper Wind, Adero Canyon, and then it's this little parcel in the middle of the right-of-way. Looking a little bit closer, so this is the Welcome Center. There is some established parking there, and the proposal is to put it here. Of note is the temporary facility is proposed to be a little bit closer, and even also, I believe, in those parking spaces. And then here is a portion of the site plan. So again, the Welcome Center's down here. There's parking. This is the location they're proposing to put it in. There was a question about where the permanent electric would come from. It is on the other side of Eagle Ridge Drive right there in the right-of-way. We looked at the consistency with the general plan. It is addressed in a couple places in the general plan. One is to provide wireless facilities to cover parts of town that aren't covered. The other is to support home occupations. We have had concerns about not only safety without having cell reception up in this area, as well as concerns about impacting their home businesses. So this request is generally compliant with the general plan. And then when we look at the zoning criteria, as I stated earlier, the zoning ordinance says that there should be a minimum 300-foot separation between a wireless tower and residential zone. I made a little map here. So this, again, is the location, the proposed location. Literally across the street is multifamily, although there is no proposed development for that area. Because it has that zoning designation, it doesn't meet that 300-foot separation requirement. The closest residence is over here, and that's more than 400 feet away. And the closest building is the Welcome Center right there, and that's 135 feet away. Addition to the height, the structure is supposed to meet setbacks in the zoning district. The setbacks here are 10 feet, and the structure is proposed to be 40 feet in height. The majority of the structure meets those setbacks. It's really just this one arm right here of the saguaro. In discussions with the applicant at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, turning the saguaro so that that arm meets the setbacks would create what the applicant said was shadowing, and it could affect the cell reception. The height of the saguaro, again, is proposed to be 40 feet tall. This affects two other criteria, one being that it doesn't meet the maximum height in that zoning district, which is 25 feet. The other is it does not meet fall distance. Fall distance is that if it were to fall, the entire structure should fall within the property and not fall on another property, or in this case, right away. While the closest structure is 135 feet away, there is right away there. It would impact the right of way if it were to fall, but it would not impact any structures. Other criteria that we looked at per the zoning ordinance, it doesn't appear that it would be detrimental to any of the adjacent properties. The topography is actually the reason that there is very good cell reception up there. In addition to not having too many towers in that area, there really is little tree coverage. The design is a faux saguaro. They're proposing no elements of the facility outside of the saguaro itself, with the exception of that electric meter over on the other side of the right-of-way. They're proposing no security fencing and no landscaping. Ingress, egress, access to the facility would be from those parking stalls. And then the applicant has provided us a map showing where other facilities are located, and this really is a needed facility in this area. And as I stated earlier, they're requesting a temporary facility at that same location. It doesn't meet any of these requirements either. So highlighted right there where the proposed tower is. And as you can see, a Darrow Canyon in this area. The preserve is over here, so we wouldn't expect there necessarily to be one located there, but a Darrow Canyon doesn't have service right now. In summary, staff found that it will provide service where service is lacking. It doesn't appear that it would be detrimental, despite the fall distance, setbacks in height, and adjacency to the residential. The noise, there was a question about how loud it would be. I believe for the temporary, if there's a generator, the applicant stated it would be about the sound of a home AC unit. And again, the closest residence is about 400 feet away. And we also feel that the design is appropriate for that location. At the Planning and Zoning Commission, again, it was discussed about turning it so that that arm met the setback, and that would create shadowing. And there was also that request for the temporary facility. They forwarded a recommendation to approve this request. One of the recommendations that staff had included was to provide a map of existing and proposed towers. We now have that map. So it is enumerated on our suggested motion, but it has already been addressed. also recommending that prior to issuing a building permit, that we revise, the applicant revise the placement and orientation of the tower to meet the setbacks. Again, that's staff's recommendation that we forwarded. The applicant is here and he can discuss that more if you would like to hear that. We would also recommend that landscaping be installed to match the area right there. It is a predominant location, the entryway into Adero Canyon. And we would also like and these are things that we're recommending Development Services Director approve prior to issuing a building permit. The final design of the saguaro, there are a multitude of designs that we've seen. Some are very rectilinear and some of them actually look really close to a natural saguaro. So we want to make sure that it looks as natural as possible in that location. And that's it for my staff report. The applicant is here if there are questions for him as well.
Thank you. Councilman Charno?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Marissa, what is a staff policy regarding multiple carriers on towers? Can we mandate that? Can we not? I mean, I see there's a letter in here from the applicant's attorney saying it's, not designed to accommodate additional telecommunication carriers. So obviously there's other carriers out there. Are we going to look at, a forest of fake saguaros in the future, or can we, accommodate several carriers on one of these, or how does that work?
So that would really actually be up to the owner of the saguaro if they would like to co-locate, if they would like to allow other services use that tower. Per the applicant's letter, this tower's engineering would not allow for that. That is something that we discussed, it was about a year ago now, when we adopted regulations addressing small wireless facilities related to the 5G network that is proposed to start rolling out. And in our discussions, we were aware that this may be an issue, and unfortunately, every single provider could install their own facility, and we could have multiple full saguaros throughout town.
So we don't have any authority in terms of mandating multiple carriers?
I don't believe that we can mandate that, no. And in addition, while this is on private property, the ones that we were just discussing, they can be put in the right-of-way by right. They wouldn't come before council, and there is no mandate that they co-locate.
And you're certain as far as design and engineering, the fall distance going to be, you say in the right-of-way, but you're talking street, so it could hit a car coming by or a pedestrian, but we're pretty sure on the design and structural integrity that that's not going to be an issue?
I don't foresee it being an issue because they don't want the tower to fall either. They're going to engineer it so that it is stable. The chance of it hitting a car passing at the exact same time, staff believes that probability is pretty low, and therefore it isn't really a concern, especially in relation to providing cell service up there, which is a safety issue as well.
Councilman Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. So at one time, there was already I will tell you the provisions are there for the electrical underneath the street from the transformer, and there's been a cell tower that has been approved for that location. And that cell tower was actually going to be a fiberglass, old-style watering tank like you would fill a train car with. Was that not a Verizon tower at the time?
It was. They did not move forward in time. We have specifications in the zoning ordinance relating to special use permits. A building permit has to be attained within 6 months of approval. They did not. The applicant can speak to why they didn't. I'm not going to speak for the applicant as to why they didn't move forward with that plan.
Well, I'm sure it's because MCO sold it, and everything went to the side for well over a year, 2 years probably. I don't recall how long it's been since we finished that at Welcome Center, but I know that all the provisions are there, and I don't know if this gentleman from Verizon was the original presenter on that. Okay, then you're aware of what all is there and what needs to be done. Thank you.
Councilwoman?
Has anyone voiced any opposition? I know there were residents in what I read that were certainly in favor of it because they don't have cell tower service or they have minimal. Any opposition voiced?
No opposition has been communicated to staff to date that I am aware of.
Any other questions and comments? Anybody want to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Move to approve with the stipulations as noted.
As noted.
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards on this item?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Wait,
I'm sorry. What?
We have a motion and a second.
If I could just recommend, I think we'll need to close the hearing before the motions are made, so.
Before the motion?
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry, to close the hearing first, and then I guess would be to call for a motion. That's correct.
Sure, we can do it that way. If there's someone who wants to speak on the matter.
Okay, that should be during the hearing then.
Should be during the
Okay.
hearing.
All right. So the speaker card, please, yeah, let's move ahead with that, the speaker card then. Thank you.
Stephen Jacobson.
Good evening. Thank you very much for all you do in making Fountain Hills a great place to live. We just moved here 7 months ago to Fountain Hills, specifically Adero Canyon, obviously an up-and-coming development and neighborhood that is growing by leaps and bounds. Communication, as you've heard throughout the evening, is a major issue. As a resident business owner, the minute you step outside your house, you have zero coverage, nothing. So you are essentially confined and locked into your home using Wi-Fi to make and receive phone calls. So from a safety issue, from a communication issue, just so many different variables. It's a very popular hiking trail. There are snakes out this time of year. If someone gets bitten, you're done. You can't call anybody. You got to run into someone's house in order to have them call 911 or fire or whatever it is. So I implore you to try and get this done as soon as possible. The Adero Canyon development will be for years to come contributing to the coffers of Fountain Hills. We're a big part of Fountain Hills. We want to be a part of Fountain Hills, but we have to be able to communicate with Fountain Hills. So please approve this as soon as possible. I realize that the main tower is going to take some time, and that's why it's important to get the mobile unit in, not today, not tomorrow, but yesterday. Thank you all for your time. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Any other cards on this issue?
No, only one written.
Pardon me?
There is only one from Boyd Edmondson, but he only wished to comment in writing for this item.
In favor of it?
In favor.
Okay, thank you. You're all in favor of it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can I ask the speaker a question before we close the hearing? I just wanted to ask if the sound of the temporary one, whether it's an AC or a vacuum cleaner or however it's been, that's all fine with you?
It far outweighs not having the ability to communicate with the outside world.
Okay.
I work from home there, and I can hear the air conditioners at all the other homes, so one more.
Same thing.
And having the phone service would definitely be worth it. And speaking on the Wi-Fi, your cell phone actually gets information not just through Wi-Fi, so there's some things that do not work through Wi-Fi, so you're still disabled.
Sure. Thank you. So I'll close.
I believe Ms. Moore had something she raised with respect to the motion. With
Oh,
Councilman Brown's
okay.
motion.
Should I close the hearing first, or? Okay, I'll close the hearing, we'll hear that, and then we'll make another motion and all that. Good. Thanks.
Mayor, I just would like to point out that the request for the temporary facility is not specifically addressed in staff's recommended motion here. And so I believe that that should be added, that it is part of the approval. One of the recommendations, and the Development Services Director is here if you would like more clarification. It may not require a building permit. If it doesn't require a building permit, that means that they're using a generator. If they hook up into electrical, then they are going to require a building permit. So one of the recommendations I believe we would take is that we review a site plan to see where and how this is located, just so we have an extra set of eyes on it.
Are you asking for a site plan for the mobile unit? For the temporary unit?
For the temporary unit,
Really?
Yes.
Really? You know where it's going.
Mayor, council member, I think it's something we can continue to work with the applicant on how much we get, and it does depend a lot on whether or not they have to put the generator in and where that ends up on the site. So I think we can just work with them at the simplest path to get it done.
And I'd like to see it moved on as quickly as possible, because if you've been out there, there is no cell service, and we've got people living out there, and to hold this up for a simple site plan when we know where it's going. It's the same location that was located at during the development phase. So let's not, you know, a permit for a permanent tower, but help the people that are in Adero Canyon, please.
Yes, Mayor and council member, we're not talking about a formal site plan review process, just that we would work with them through that building permit process to make sure we understand where they're going. So yes, we'll do that.
Well, if I had my say on the deal, I would ask them to try to set a tower up out there tomorrow. I mean, it's that simple. But I know we have hoops to jump through, but let's minimize them, please.
Councilman Brown, if I may, Mayor, we did address this last month with the Planning and Zoning Commission. The applicant can elaborate on this, but I believe even with the temporary facility, it's going to take a couple months to get it out there. And so staff doesn't have any intent of holding that up. If
it takes a couple of months, so be it, but I would truly like to see it moved along as quickly as possible. I built out there for a full year without any cell service at all, and it's dangerous.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to move that along, please.
Thank you. So does that change the motion?
I'll add to the motion.
Withdraw or add to the motion, yeah.
I'd like to restate the motion, please, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the motion as presented by staff, and I would like to add to it the temporary facility as quickly as possible.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 6-0. Thank you very much. Next is the approval of the emergency operation plan. I think that's going to be our
Yes,
Chief Ott.
we're going to have Chief Ott come and speak to you. I believe he has a brief presentation. Just briefly, my introductory remarks on this is just all cities and towns and various different levels of government have what are considered emergency operations plans. They help you address, or they help the organizations address major natural disasters, man-made disasters. It has, it conforms to the National Incident Management System, which is a FEMA process, and it outlines on depending on the type of incident, the management and who's involved in it. Due to the safety and security and not wanting to give away our game plan, so to speak, if we did have an incident, that is the reason why this was not actually included in the packet. But the chief is going to give you a brief presentation to kind of cover basically the outline of what this is. So you have a little bit better idea of what you're going to be considering to approve tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief Ott.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I took a page out of Craig's book, and there's 300 and some pages in the emergency operation plan. We've got 300 slides tonight, so.
He just said it's confidential.
Okay. We're talking about the 2019 update of the emergency operations plan. The Fountain Hills Emergency Operation Plan is a framework for emergency responders in Fountain Hills government departments, including outside support agencies, to coordinate and collaborate if we had a man-made or natural disaster. Additionally, the plan provides guidance on emergency operations center activation and the incident coordination and collaboration. It was last updated and approved in 2013. The 2019 update brings the plan into compliance with the National Incident Management System and FEMA's comprehensive preparedness guidelines, and in alignment with the Maricopa County EOP and the AZ CERP. The plan was updated using a bold planning web-based software, which is currently being used by the majority of the communities in the Maricopa County. This update also streamlined many of the actions and assignments and removed many of the redundancies.
The plan addresses the access and functional needs populations, pets and service animals, and better defines roles and responsibilities in the event of an emergency. In addition, the town EOPs, the following plans have been developed and are maintained pursuant to state and federal requirements. The plans have been incorporated in the EOP ESFs and annexes. And you can see the Maricopa County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan, local emergency planning committees, continuity of operations, continuity of government, Maricopa Emergency Operations Plan, Maricopa County Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and the Arizona State Emergency Response and Recovery Plan. Anybody have any questions? We also have our Maricopa County Emergency Planning planner here, Mike Winters, who's a town resident as well. If you have any questions, he can answer it from the county standpoint as well.
Thank you. Any questions? The only thing I wanted to ask about was the familiarity with it, since it is so long and involved. Who's responsible? You know, how does it become so familiar that if something should happen, they would know like that? We talked a little bit about that when we had the joint meeting with the school district, and how certain personnel there just really need to know it like the back of their hands.
Well, and that's part of my role and part of our Maricopa County Emergency Planning role. In the event that we did have an emergency, that onus pretty much falls back on me to get the plan rolling, look at what we're doing, activate the Emergency Operations Center. At that point, we would also notify the county that our Emergency Operations Center was up. Now that we've got the plan before you, we plan on moving forward with some smaller tabletops to get a little bit more familiar with the plan, and then move forward into some bigger exercises. But the overall body of the plan would be something that I would be more familiar with as the emergency manager, and then each individual section would have their responsibilities, and it's pretty well spelled out. It's a playbook that you can take. It's a plug and play. We can adapt it for what we need to, but an example would be on the finance side of it. Finance would have a place at the table at the Emergency Operations Center. They would have that book in front of them, which is going to kind of line everything out. So if Craig was familiar with it, but Craig was not available if Dave was familiar with it, because Craig won't be here, he'll be out golfing somewhere. But if Dave was familiar with his section of it, but he was not there at the time that we activated the Emergency Operations Center, then Beata could move into it, the book would be in front of her, and she could go step by step on things that were outlined that they would need to follow. So, and in any event, we would also walk you through step by step things that you might need to assist us with as well. So.
And just want to let you know too, so the staff typically all have these with them in their offices. I would like to get the council individual notebooks that has all this as well. It's not like it's that top secret that you can't have it. I do believe we did send you links so that you could look at it at least prior to tonight's meeting. But we'll do that. We'll go ahead and put it together. It has tabs and it shows you basically all the various different roles that both the elected officials, typically the mayor has a very important role in this event for disaster declarations and those types of things, and maybe dealing with news media. But we'll get this off to you. Appreciate your support. The county, I don't think he mentioned it, but the county really provides the backbone to all the municipalities here in the valley. And they're there really, particularly in our case where we're a smaller community, they really can provide a lot more technical assistance to us during an event as well. And it kind of starts off, it goes federal, state, and then the county and us. And so typically the state and the county and the municipalities work very closely on these type of incidents, depending on the nature of the incident. So with that, I'll turn it over to the chief.
Correct. And if anybody would prefer a paper version of it, we can print out the 300 plus pages for it and put it in a binder for you. Other than that, I think it was loaded down to the Dropbox. So, and at any time, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me and we'll walk you through it.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards on this?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Someone want to make a motion, please? Bless you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that a motion?
Thank you.
Salud.
Yeah, I move to approve the revised and updated emergency operations plan to submit to the County Department of Emergency Management.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chief. Next, we have the application for a grant from the Arizona Sports and Tourism Authority. That would be our Director, Rachel Goodwin. Excuse me. No, I'm gonna say.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for having me. I hope to make this one a short and sweet item for you. We are looking to apply once again for the Arizona Sports and Tourism Authority grant. This is a every other year grant, so it falls on the even years, if you will. So the 2020 grant is out and due at the end of June. We have been eyeing this grant. It is specific to youth and amateur sports, and it is only available to nonprofits and municipalities within Maricopa County. They have well over several $1 million to allocate this year, with up to a $250,000 allocation per entity. If you recall, we were recipients of this grant back in 2016, and that's what we used to resurface our tennis courts. So we will be applying once again with your permission. We are going to be applying for funding for a full court, single court basketball court over at Four Peaks Park. As you know, we've been going through a number of renovations over at Four Peaks Park. Unfortunately, the basketball court funding is not something that we're able to undertake with our current CIP. So we would be looking for this as an alternate funding source. The location, you have a map there in front of you. The location is there on the western portion of the park, adjacent to the existing parking area that services primarily the tennis courts. That location was chosen strategically because we do have existing parking that we can reach, as well as power outlets there to reach and run lighting for the basketball court as well. So that is what we're hoping to receive grant funding for. This is a 2/3 match grant, so we would be matching roughly, your paperwork says $85,000, but I was alerted by Craig, I believe we actually have $80,000 allocated. So we would be requesting just under, probably about $160,000 from the grant source. If awarded, we would find out this fall with construction to begin as of January 1. It would need to be completed by the end of calendar year 2020.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Councilman?
Rachel, would this be on the quality or standards of, say, what over at Golden Eagle Park?
It would, yes. The intention would be to have something similar, a very similar look and feel as Golden Eagle Park. And I appreciate you mentioning that, because I was remiss to say that we have already reached out to the Boys and Girls Club, which is obviously a big user of this park, for the support of this project. They do support the location and the project itself as a addition to their programs. And we've also been in touch with the Fountain Hills Coalition, as well as our local basketball coaches that use our outdoor amenities for practices and things like that.
Do we have any speaker cards?
No.
Thank you. Any other comments or motion?
Mayor, I have one. Oh,
Sorry.
Oh, I didn't see it.
It's gonna move.
Oh, you were going to move? Yeah. Let him move. But I do have a question. Maybe the town manager can tell us where this $85,000 is going to come from, and what budgetary item we're going to take it from to fund this.
Thank you.
Very good question. I believe it's in the capital improvement program that was tentatively approved at the last council meeting. So the council, we went through a presentation on the Four Peaks Park, and this actually was in there, and I believe at the time that we did the presentation, we had identified the funding source in the capital fund for this, correct?
On page 165.
Not correct.
Not correct. I thought it was.
It's set up in the grants fund, Fund 400, where we have an amount set aside of $1 million for anticipated, unanticipated grants, and so the money was budgeted in that fund.
Well, we do have a project for Four Peaks next year, so what is the amount in that?
I don't recall the amount of the project, but the funding for this grant project would come from the grant fund. and then the work would be done in the capital
But my
project.
point on the match, I think, is where he's asking where the match is coming from. It's coming out of the capital fund.
The match would be coming from the grants fund.
Oh, okay, I stand corrected. I apologize, Vice Mayor, because
That's okay.
usually, a lot of times, our capital program will be the match.
Right. And to clarify, if we don't get the grant allocation, we don't spend the
Of course,
the grant
sure.
funding.
No, and just a comment, and before we have a motion, I just think that, if we're going to get 2/3 of the funds, if we're able to secure that, I think this is money well spent for that particular area and the youth in that area. That's a family-oriented area of the community, which these improvements are going to make a big difference with housing and housing values and people wanting to be in that area. So I think it's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. We didn't have a motion yet, did we? No?
So with that, I'll just move approval as written.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. 6-0. Thank you, Rachel. Next, we have approving the Fountain Hills General Plan Update Public Participation Plan.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I feel very remiss. Before you tonight is our Interim Development Services Director, John Wesley. He's been doing a knockout job in development services, and he's here to present to you the proposed public participation plan for the general plan.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Good to be here with you this evening. As has been stated, we're here to talk about the public participation plan that accompanies the update to the general plan. You're aware that we have certainly been working on this process for a number of months, had a number of community events that have already taken place, and those have been consistent with the plan that was actually prepared at the beginning of the process as required by state statute. As I got involved with this and was looking back through the records, the state statutes also require that the governing body approve this public participation plan. So while we've had it and we've been following it, we were remiss in bringing it to the council to get your approval. So that's what we're here about this evening, is to get this approval. So this plan does help guide the efforts we have for getting the public involved. We've had good participation to date in the process. We have just recently made some updates to our website to help inform the public better about where we're at currently in the process and get some of the documents out for them to see. The plan includes 3 basic levels of input. There's the Technical Advisory Committee, which is primarily staff that's involved in the day-to-day working with the consultant to get the materials reviewed and together for the public. There are major stakeholders. Some of you have been involved in some of those meetings in the past where we've gotten out to the public. And the citizens at large, and the different community events that we've had and workshops where they've been invited to participate, as well as, again, just the general website opportunity to email and provide comments at any time to the staff throughout the process. So the plan that we have was attached to the report that went out, and that's what we're asking council to approve this evening as we go forward. It's been slightly revised as we've looked at it here of late to really reflect where we are at in the process and moving forward and how it will be implemented. And just to let the council know that we are starting to work with the consultant to begin drafting the parts of the plan. We expect to have first draft of the vision, land use elements by late August. We have in our schedule to come back to council and the Planning and Zoning Commission at that time to share with you the first information that comes out as we start to get that out to the public. We then expect to have a draft of the full plan by November, and we'll really get into a robust citizen involvement, giving us feedback on that draft plan as we move on into the approval process a year from now. Any questions about the public participation plan?
Councilman.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, John. Did you say you thought you'd have this done by November?
We'll have a draft plan ready for council and citizens to be reviewing and giving us feedback on. The final draft we need to have by around the February timeframe, so we can go through the 60-day review process and so forth into the formal adoption a year from now.
That's quick, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to know what efforts are being made to really reach out to the constituents in the community. I asked that question because I've went to 2 of these already, and I don't agree that they were well attended. And I also don't necessarily know, while it's a responsibility for the citizens to know what's happening in their communities, we also have a responsibility to really do everything we can for outreach. So what are we doing, and how can we improve that? Because I don't think the meetings have been well attended, and I think that people will be surprised that this process is going on.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, I understand your concern. As I've looked back through the numbers of participants compared to the size of the town, I see where your concern is with those numbers. I've been involved in a lot of these over the years, and I never get as much attendance and participation as I would really like to see. And I know that it's important to the town. People will come in at a zoning stage or a site plan stage and want to get involved suddenly, and we have to back them up and say, well, the general plan has already kind of set this in motion. That really is the time to get citizens involved. So it's certainly something we will be paying close attention to, largely through the website's our main way of getting that out, but we'll have to look for other ways to direct people there, and as events come up in the fall with the stakeholders and community meetings, we'll be looking. I'm still new enough to the town that I'm not sure of all the ways we have available, but we'll certainly be working with our PIO to find the best ways to really get people informed and get them out to these meetings.
Right, to the Vice Mayor's point too, just to let you know, so we have Fountain Hills First, that newsletter that comes out on a quarterly basis going out to every household. There will be stories in that, and we also are going to be using social media to try to reach out to people. So I think we're going to do the best we can on this. I have noticed in other communities I've been in, unless there's a particular issue that mobilizes people, people tend to not really get too involved in this. And this is, I agree, this is one of the most important things we do from a land use standpoint. We only do this every 10 years, and this is a great opportunity for people to get involved. But you'll see, unless there's something that people are very upset about, which typically doesn't necessarily translate into the general plan, it's typically zoning, and it might be a zoning case.
Be barking dogs or the number of cars on your street.
Exactly. They don't necessarily get involved because part of it's nebulous. People don't really understand. They confuse land use and the general plan with zoning, and they think it's one and the same, and it's not. So that's part of our job, and part of the job of the consultants is to help educate folks about what a general plan is and why their input's very important in this process.
Mayor, I'd just like to make one suggestion. If it hasn't already been done, I would reach out to Betsy Carey at the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber has sponsored some town, state of the towns in the past. I think that this may be something that they would like to get behind. I think it would be beneficial to the business owners in the community to be involved in this, and it may create more of a buzz as to what is happening, and maybe the mayor would participate, and we all could have some sort of a community gathering that would draw a lot of attention to this to get as much feedback as possible.
Very good, Mayor, Vice Mayor. I appreciate that. I've worked closely with chambers before, and I think that is an excellent suggestion, and we will reach out to them.
Thank you. The the anniversary plan for the 2020, which is the 50th anniversary, and combined with the 30th anniversary of the being an incorporated town. Also, the census. There's a lot of things kind of happening that hopefully we can help each other to publicize some of these things. Where the preliminary meeting is actually Thursday, the 23rd, to talk about the anniversary and how all of the groups in town and the efforts in town could tie into it, and maybe we could get the energy that will come with one thing that will help with the other, and maybe that would be an opportunity also, as well as what you said, Vice Mayor, to inform people more about it. This also is a quality of life issue. It's a vision issue. There's a lot of things going on here, and we'll support you as best we can. And just a quick question, the council then is on the stakeholder part of it?
Certainly, as we have those meetings, the council will be welcome to attend any of the stakeholder or community meetings that occur.
Okay. And I think that's part of the initial sort of fit and start with this effort. And now I think we know where we're going. So I really appreciate it. Are there any speaker cards?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, move to approve the Town of Fountain Hills General Plan 2020 Update Public Participation Plan.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 6-0. Thank you very much. Thank you for your help. So next we have an item about an agreement with Maricopa County. Councilwoman?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to state something for the record. Although I don't think it is a legal conflict for me, but due to my employment contract with Maricopa County, until I can further vet these issues that come before us with contracts with Maricopa County entities, for tonight's purposes, I'm going to abstain from discussion and voting and recuse myself from this issue, but I'll stay seated where I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So Grady, who's presenting here?
I'll go ahead and just do the
Okay.
introduction, and I'll do this. This is a great service that we have. We've had a relationship with Maricopa County Animal Control for a number of years. For approximately almost $21,000, they do a great job with the services that they provide to our town. In fact, we just had a meeting. Rachel Goodwin is the contact and the liaison with the animal control. Used to be a finance director. When we have citizens complaining about off-leash dogs at parks, or when we have other issues, Rachel gets on the phone and contacts them, and they're very responsive, pretty much right there on the spot. We met with them 3 weeks ago because we've been having a lot of issues with off-leash dogs, both at Golden Eagle Park, Four Peaks, Fountain Park, and Desert Vista. And they started being very active on trying to be proactive to start trying to catch folks and try to get the word out there. They brought some weaknesses to our attention that are in our current dog or animal leash law, our ordinance. And so we're going to likely be bringing something back to you probably when we come back after the summer. But with this, I recommend approval. This is a good value for what we get, and this is a 3-year term. The second year goes up by almost $900, and then the third year will be determined in the end of the second year. With that, I recommend approval.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on this? Do you have any speaker cards?
No.
All right, I think we're ready for a motion then.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2019-32.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. 5-0. Thank you. Item F is building code amendments.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight, basically we're in the process of trying to update our building code amendments. Our building codes right now, they go back some time, and we were made aware of through the ISO process that they highly recommended that we make several different measures or take several different measures, including the adoption of more current building codes and uniform codes. So before you tonight, we have these codes, and I'm going to go ahead and call upon our chief building official, Peter Johnson, who has some remarks regarding this. The ISO rating is very important. I'm not sure a lot of people are aware of this, but it affects mostly your commercial property owners that own commercial properties. And so you want to maintain a very high level of your ISO rating, because it translates into higher insurance rates. It also affects those of us who are homeowners as well. So unfortunately, they don't take into consideration, as my understanding, like our sprinkler ordinance, which I think is just, tantamount to a travesty, because this is probably one of the biggest factors, I think, in reducing fires, at least in homes. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Johnson, who has a few words to say about this.
Mayor and Council, Peter Johnson, your chief building official. I don't see you very often, but yeah, I prepared the resolution and ordinance to adopt the most recent edition of the Uniform Model Code, or I'll call it the international model codes, which is building, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, fire, energy code. That's what I do every day for the town, is enforce those regulations, and it's time to update. It's been over 6 years. Like our town manager said, the ISO Insurance Service Organization provides discounts based on the building code effectiveness in each community. So if I don't keep our codes current by getting them adopted, they have a weighted average that they use to determine our score for our community. And so they rate us in commercial and residential both. Level of staff, number of inspections per day, who does your plan reviews, are they qualified, what codes are we using, all those different factors determine a community's building code effectiveness. And so I want to maintain our effectiveness at the highest rate possible with the resources we have. Grady found money for me earlier this year to buy the code books ahead of time so that I could have time to see what changes were coming, if any, and to basically address any amendments that need to be made to keep our codes uniform with our zoning ordinances. And an example of that might be the building code doesn't require a permit for a fence that's less than 6 feet tall. Our ordinance is 3 feet. We have retaining walls that aren't required in the code to have a permit if they're less than 4 feet. Our code is 2. Those are the type of changes that are in the amendment. Very few, in fact. And the only major amendments are in the fire code, which Chief Dave Ott and Jason Payne put together from rural metro and Scottsdale, since they're kind of partners with Scottsdale as far as their knowledge base and who they pull their references from. So I'm here to ask for your support to consider this and approve it.
Thank you. Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Peter. This is, of course, near and dear to my heart. It's what we live and breathe every day, and I took about an hour of Mr. Johnson's time, and he walked me through the changes that were being made in every one of the aspects of the code, and I do appreciate your time doing that. And I have to agree that there's nothing significant that is being changed, and I totally support everything that is being changed in this 2018 code.
Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion if we don't have any more comments. Go ahead.
No. Speaker card? No? Okay.
Move to adopt Resolution 2019-27 and Ordinance 1906 adopting 2018 International Building Code and National Electrical Code with the Town of Fountain Hills amendments.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
6-0. Thank you.
That was a mouthful.
Thank you for reaching out to him and getting your answers. The next is the legislative item, the usual, same kind of two things we're looking at. The tobacco products one is still waiting to be third read in the House, and of course we oppose that one, and we hope it doesn't interfere. I think they tried to tweak it so it wouldn't interfere with our not smoking in the parks, but either way, I saw a TV ad from the Arizona Lung Association against it, and so we'll see where that goes. And then the short-term rental bill is on the governor's desk. So things are a little bit just waiting for everybody to agree on the budget. So there hasn't been any movement on those two.
Mayor, did you also want to brief the council on the flight patterns and
yeah,
the letter we're likely going to send tomorrow?
Yeah, it's kind of direction to town manager, but you already you had the idea. So the flight patterns FAA proposals seemed to be okay with us, but now we've become aware of some comments from other cities that do affect us in maybe a way that we don't that we might not like. So it's a little hard to tell because another city is putting a comment in. We don't know if FAA is going to do what the comment said, but so we feel now that we probably need to have our opinion told, which would just reconfirm our commitment to the patterns the way they are now and to not move them any further west. So So Grady, you're gonna,
Yeah, if the council's fine, Aaron and I will work together on a letter that will go to the appropriate parties so that the closing date is Thursday to get any comments in. So we definitely want to let them know that we're satisfied with the current flight patterns the way they are now. If they want to go further east, we're even more fine with that. But we definitely don't want them flying any further west and causing disruptions to our residents here.
thank you. So the last item, which is the council discussion direction to town manager, we have 2 items that are agendized, so we can talk about them. Would you like to talk about it first? Grady, item A about Saguaro frontage.
Mayor and council, you probably recall it's probably been going on maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago. The vice mayor asked for the possibility of the manager looking into the Saguaro Frontage Road abandonment. The area in question is really the area where the businesses are located between Colony and also Panorama. This was looked at probably about 10 years ago. Actually started even earlier than that. It was probably about 13 years ago, and then after a few years of doing some preliminary design and some work, the idea was that the businesses would have the opportunity to, if we did the abandonment of that frontage road, they would then be able to expand their lots out up to where that property was, and they can have additional parking. In your packet tonight, there was basically a preliminary plan that showed how that appeared 10 years ago. I will tell you that staff recommends the council to consider providing the direction on this project. We think that that there's a lot of potential good that can come out of this, including if we redesign what was done 10 years ago, there could be turning pockets that would actually be safer for cars to get into the driveways that are actually facing Saguaro. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know the Vice Mayor, I think, has some words to say on this as well.
Okay, thank you, Town Manager. Thank you, Mayor. So I did bring this to your attention back in 2006, I believe. I was on the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and this was an issue that we brought up at that time. And the issue is really that the businesses on Saguaro right now could benefit tremendously from this type of proposal if it's done correctly, and we work with them in regards to the improvements of their lots. Grady has some ideas on how we can do that. I think he'll probably come back with recommendations at a later date, but everything that he discussed and with meetings with Justin, it really looked like this could go in a very positive direction and could benefit those businesses. So I would like to see us move forward with this. I think we have some speakers as well, so we'll see what they have to say. It's really going to be the businesses there that are going to need to decide whether this is something that's going to be a benefit to them and allow the town to work with the owners of the businesses to make this a real win-win for them and for the town.
Thank you. Any further comments, or I'll go to speaker cards, please.
I do not have any speaker cards on hand regarding this particular issue, unless there is someone from the audience.
You can come up and speak.
You may come up. And could you please state your name?
My name is Detlef Lang, L-A-N-G, and I'm a property owner of 2 parcels on that access road there we have. I appreciate that you're looking at that. It's been a problem and a disaster to happen to have 2-way traffic on that small road that we have. The problem that we do have, and first of all, this was handed to me. There were several owners that left already, and none of us were aware of that, basically. I don't know how I even got it. I think Jeff gave it to me, and I don't know where he got it from, but this is the first time that we were even as owners aware of it, okay? Secondly, that I just want to mention on that, I have 10 businesses renting from me in my little strip mall there. And so far, I have a negative input from them, because they feel because we're in C3, and with C3, we have to have semi-trucks coming in at times for delivery. Because in the alley, we have a very steep ramp in the alley, and they cannot come up, the semi-trucks, and they cannot deliver big, heavy loads up that way with a push car. So over suddenly, I have people right away say, no, 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 I know something needs to be done. I am very happy that you even look at that. However, there might be a problem in the way it's being shown over here. Maybe there's some work going to be done later. But one thing is, I've been here 25 years. I think I own the buildings for 20-some-2 or so. I can never understand why we have two-way traffic on that road. Don't make sense. Even at night when I go to work, I go down the wrong way, so to speak, against the traffic, and I scare people with my headlights coming at them. So I don't even know why we're even doing this, but nevertheless, this is something that's been looked on for a long time. I want to say thank you for looking at it. We have a concern for it, but also keep in mind that's C3, and we need trucks coming in sometimes to deliver for these tenants. That's very important. Some of them are worrying about that they lose their business. And if you're familiar with one of my tenants is Ice and Water. We have a lot of landscaper with trailers pulling in, but they got to come back out. Now it works fine. We have one entrance and one out. It's not the ideal situation we got, but it works. The other way, I think they will lose that type of business. That's all I got to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Any others? No? So, yes, Councilman?
Couple things. We allow parking on that service drive, don't we? So, you know, maybe that's one thing to look at. Maybe, you know, maybe the businesses like parking out there, but that, I think, adds to the two-way traffic issue and the width of that service drive. And then reading through the report and what occurred last time back in 2008, you know, it said one owner kind of didn't want to participate, and that kind of killed the whole thing. So is that kind of what we're looking at this time? Or, I mean, I think it's going to be very difficult to get 100% unanimous approval. So, I mean, it is affecting all the property owners along that stretch.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I think it's this gentleman here that had a concern the last time, and this was back in 2007 or so. However, I think this is exactly why we need to move forward, to put some time into this so that we can have a meeting with the owners, we can talk to them all, we can address the issues, we can look at possibly turning that whole area into an improvement district and working with the business owners to solve these issues. So this has been going on way too long. It's a poor design for the area, and with council support, we can move forward with an internal evaluation of what's the best way to handle this, and we can talk with the owners of the businesses.
Thank you. Talk about the general plan. Our general plan does address this as a goal, and of course, these things all happened before we were incorporated, and it had to do with how many driveways could actually come out on a boulevard, you know, so those are some of the historical reasons why it might be that way, and is certainly worth looking at again. Councilman?
Grady, can you just address a little bit how you envision approaching this? If we're like, yeah, let's do this in terms of staff commitment, time, energy, costs, you know.
First of all, the concern I had, and this is why it's on the agenda, is we had this item on the agenda where the vice mayor had asked for the manager to go look into this and deal with this. And really, I wanted to bring this back to the full council because this is really a policy direction. And so that's why the full council would need to give me a direction. That's why it's on here. I see this as a two-step process. Tonight, if you go ahead and say yes, it's not necessarily saying, yes, make the project happen, What it is basically giving us the green light to go ascertain and work with the residents to find out, I'm sorry, the business owners and the property owners, to find out if they have an interest in this. If there's no interest, or there's, it appears that it's not going to be something that they're willing to do, then we'll come back to you. Either way, we're going to come back to the council and close the loop on this. If you feel if there's unanimous support and this is something you feel that would be something that we ought to do, then we'll invest more time and resources and come up with a plan to make this happen, working with the business owners. The Vice Mayor mentioned Improvement District. When this was approached the last time, they were talking about selling the land on a cost per linear foot, I think it was, or square foot. I think it was $14 a square foot. As far as I'm concerned, this is cost avoidance. Anything we could do to get rid of this, paving and having to maintain it. But the improvements like the sidewalks, landscaping, and driveways, and any parking, those would be improvement district type expenses, and those would have to be borne by the property owners. We could not do that at our expense. But we would be able to develop an improvement district, be able to help finance it, have each of those properties assessed a pro rata share of those improvements, and they would be paying that over maybe a 20-year life. So it'd be a little bit more reasonable. It wouldn't be like they have to pay it all at once. But the town would benefit because we wouldn't have to maintain the street, the median, the landscaping, the watering of the trees and all that in the median. So.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. For everyone's consideration and just understanding, there's been some time already put into this, and it's been my time. And I have worked with many of the business owners already down there, just kind of bouncing this idea off to determine whether or not it was even appropriate to bring to the council level. And I have had positive responses from Rex Foley, who has his automotive dealership there, who's actually thinking about expanding. The landscape ownership was spoken to by the owner of Sign Art and third parties indicating that they are also in favor of looking at this seriously further. The gentleman here, and I apologize I didn't get your first name, but I know you're friends with Jeff Pointner. Jeff Pointner is the owner of the U-Haul dealership, and he is strongly in favor of moving forward with this type of proposal. And also Gasper from with Saporis is very 100%, he says, in favor of moving forward with this, and has offered his restaurant to have a meeting after we move forward and get council to move on this, to get everyone involved and really come up with a comprehensive plan to determine if we can move this forward and get everyone's concerns approved. Okay? So I think I would like to see this move forward. I hope we get unanimous consent.
And then just to clarify, this plan developed 10, 11 years ago. That's one proposal, but we're not necessarily going into this with that. I mean, we're going to be open to other suggestions and possible improvements or what have you, I assume.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in fact, based on what we just heard tonight, I think that's going to be essential. Also, I can tell you what was done 10 years ago, I think would have been very hazardous to have been implemented the way it was, because there was no turning pockets or what I call deceleration lanes to turn into the driveways. So cars that were going to be slowing down, trying to get into the driveways, would have been hit from behind. So this would have to be a design consideration as well. So I think all those factors are going to have to be looked into. And then we're going to also, at some point, if the council wants to go forward with this, following discussion with the property owners and the business owners, then we're going to have to do a little bit more work on engineering estimates as to what it might cost to make these improvements. And then we'll have to kind of figure out what it could potentially cost these folks who have these businesses.
Yeah, I was going to say too, because there is some topography. I mean, Saguaro isn't at the same level as the service drive, I don't believe. So you got some slopes going on there too, which would add to the cost.
Okay, any other questions or discussions? So we vote on this, right? So is there a motion? It's in the agenda.
I would make a motion as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, got it, 6-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for bringing it to us. Next is the municipal sponsorship and naming rights discussion.
So,
Grady?
Mayor and Council, I believe it was either the last council meeting or the meeting before that, Councilmember Spellich indicated that he wanted to have a discussion regarding the fees for legacy events and wanted to ensure that we had a discussion if this was an equitable situation. And so I had the staff go ahead and research this further. A few years ago, we actually had a revision to what we call the municipal sponsorship and naming rights policy. It originally came up when we had some requests for, I want to call it a farm to table event, and the council at that point wanted to encourage events to come in, so they were of the opinion that we should, on first-year events, give them a kind of a break on the fees that they paid, on the rentals and such, and then kind of gradually charge them the full freight as to what those rental costs would be. In that same policy, we had identified what we called legacy events. The legacy events at that time were the St. Patrick's Day event, the Oktoberfest event, and the two great fairs that are held by the Chamber. The reason why those were called legacy events is that those were events that predated the town being incorporated as a city or town. And so those had special recognition for not paying fees and so forth. So I'll turn it over to David, because I know David is the one that wanted to talk about this, and he has a specific thought in mind, and I'll let him speak on it.
Thank you, Grady, Madam Mayor. As my fellow council members know, when we had the discussion at the budget meeting, the workshop, about how the town should be collecting, how should we get revenues. So I looked at many different sources, and the sources were, of course, the court, uncollected fees in the courts that we approved a position to collect. Also, the environmental fee. It should be of no shock to anyone that we have budgetary problems. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. With all respect to the legacy members that are named here, times have changed, which was once the ability to be able to do this. I feel under these budgetary constraints, the time needs to change. I believe that if we as a council and elected officials are asking town residents to reach into their pocket for this future proposed public safety fee, which we tried to be as fair as we could with the public safety fee, the same should go for any fees that the town charges. That's nothing to say that as we're revisiting this now, there's nothing to say down the road if things change financially for the town, we would revisit this again. But I was quite surprised when I first came on and I met with all the directors and Rachel Goodwin. I asked, what does the town make? I also met with Director Rudolphi. What does the town make? What do we make on these things? Because we're literally bringing thousands of cars running on our streets and people using our facilities. And I was quite surprised to learn, not singling out specifically the fair, but the very minimal amount of money that's collected for the fair. A $50 special use permit, and then taxes. And we all know that the sales tax generated from the fair is very hard to track. We don't know. It's on the honor system. And I don't think there's anybody here who has been to the fair, and believe me, my wife is king of the $80 wind chime, who hasn't been offered a pay me cash and then I won't charge you sales tax. So that goes on quite frequently. So we're expecting vendors to pay on every transaction, which is not happening. It's also not fair and equitable when we charge $8,000 to Concourse in the Hills. Am I right on that figure? 7,000, I stand corrected, $7,000 to Concourse in the Hills for a one-day event that brings in well over, I think, 20,000 people to the town, and which is a nonprofit organization run by Peter Volney, which he paid the fee out of his pocket and then donated $150,000 to the Children's Phoenix Hospital. So I believe the time for organizations, regardless of who they are, not paying their fair share to the town, especially when they're an event that makes money and they're a profit organization, is something that we as council members, if we're asking residents to pay, we should ask everyone to pay. And it needs to be fair and equitable. So that's where I stand on it.
Any comments on this or any speaker cards?
Yes. Sharon Morgan?
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm sorry this is the last item because I want to be home just as much as you do. Since the beginning, there have been approximately 78 total art shows. Using a conservative figure of 75,000 people per show, and we know the last 10, 15 years have been way over that. Let me put my glasses on. That has brought into the town roughly 5,850,000 people. Now, all of you know also, our main industry in this town is tourism. I can't tell you how many homes have been bought because they've come to the fairs. I can't tell you how many international people have been here, artists and things of that nature. We have calls all the time at the chamber. Just last week we had 2. What are the dates for the 2020 shows? I want to make my airline reservations now. These come from the East Coast, West Coast, Europe, Central America, Hawaiian Islands. Those art shows are what has put Fountain Hills on the radar. Our fountain has, but I think 5 million people put it on the radar also. So I want you to consider before you go altering or changing these pillar events, of which you raise the fees like you were talking about. Some of them might go away, have to go away. You also have sales tax. Your hotels are full, that's bed tax. Your restaurants are full. You don't have anything else going on in this town that provides the sales tax that I specifically speak of, the 2 art shows. So I would ask you to be very careful of altering those legacy pillar events for the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Any further comments or questions? Councilman.
I appreciate Sharon Morgan's comments, and there's no bigger legend than her and everything that she's done for the town. So I truly appreciate that. Business is business. The Chamber of Commerce, if they were to propose to pay those fees, would have no intention whatsoever of stopping those art fairs. The profit that they make, which hasn't been mentioned, far succeeds the fee that would be charged. So yes, many visitors come to the art fair. Yes, many visitors have purchased homes from visiting the art fair. Yes, people have used the hotels and the restaurants. That's all well and good. But I don't believe that an operation that takes in the amount of money that they take in is going to be negatively affected to the point where they wouldn't hold the fairs anymore. And we're not talking a very large fee. I believe $24,000 for two fairs, $24,000 to close down the town for 2 fairs. And once again, let me reiterate, this isn't just Councilman Spellich talking. Mayor Dickey and I were recently at a Kiwanis event in which there was plenty of questions wondering why a fee is not charged. Numerous places that I've been to speaking. It just came up this evening when a person came up for the public comments about what people are paying, what are we making. So it's nothing personal. That's what I want to make sure that no one at the Chamber of Commerce, no one connected to the Oktoberfest or any of this is nothing personal. It is simply what is fair and equitable for all the residents in town, and I would believe that there would be more residents for charging this fee than there would be for against it.
I have a couple, go ahead.
You want to go first? Go ahead.
Well, I just had a couple questions because I had asked, and thank you, Angela, for getting the minutes from the meeting when these legacy events were created, basically. It says the chamber is a nonprofit with the profits benefiting the chamber, who then uses those in town. Is the chamber considered a nonprofit? Pardon me?
Not for profit.
Not for profit. So that was in the minutes from the 2016. Also, it says that the chamber paid all costs for their events and that the chamber had been a great help in increasing collections of licenses and sales tax benefiting the town. So these are from the minutes when the decision was made to go with this. I also wanted to ask 2 things. So one was that we're a member of the chamber, but not being charged for that. Is that also true?
That's true. We're not a paying member, but we're extended membership complimentary through the chamber.
And last, I just want to point out that when we had the State of the Town this time, I was very insistent on not making it a paid event, and the chamber sponsored it and provided the breakfast. So I'm just trying to create a little balance here. I know it's not $20,000, but I don't know, it could be.
Can I just clarify a couple of things?
Yes.
One, the chamber pays for everything for the fair. For the MCSO guys, we don't get anything else from the town. We don't need staff support. We don't use staff support. We don't use any other entities from the town. We pay for everything. Now, if these fees are put on us, yes, we can pay them, and yes, we probably will. But no, we won't have the same amount of artists because those costs will be passed on to the artists in their fees. And we're up there pretty much the maximum of what we can charge the artist. So we won't have, I can almost guarantee, the same amount of artists. Therefore, we won't have the same amount of sales tax. Therefore, the restaurants won't feel that much. Therefore, the service clubs that are in the fair, free of charge, in the concessionaires, won't have the money that they have now to give back to the community through scholarships and their programs. So again, I would say, please look at this with a little bit more thought than what I'm thinking is being exerted now. Thank you.
Thanks. Vice Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to commend Councilman Spellich, because since you've been on council, you've been adamant about the costs and about fees and about trying to come up with ways to generate revenue, and I respect that, and it needs to happen. In this particular case, I see this as like penny wise, pound foolish. I see this as the Chamber of Commerce. I see the Oktoberfest, which is a volunteer organization with Christine Colley and many, many other people involved in that. And these, what would be considered legacy events, I consider these events community organizations that are bringing tremendous value to Fountain Hills. And like our former mayor said, tourism is our number one, in my opinion, and I don't think this is arguable. I think tourism right now is going to be the saving grace for this community long term. We have got to embrace tourism. We used to have a tourism with the chamber. We used to have a really good program back 2003, 2002. Mark McDermott ran it. Fort McDowell was tied in. We need to get back and have an even stronger partnership with this Chamber of Commerce and other organizations that want to bring events to this town, that will bring revenue, that will bring tourism, that will put Fountain Hills in the spotlight. That when you come to Fountain Hill, come to Arizona, you're going to come to Fountain Hills. You're going to go to Sedona, but you're going to make sure you get to Fountain Hills. I'd rather see, Sharon, honestly, I'd rather see the 10 grand be part of your salary, because I honestly know how hard you've worked. I've worked with you for 5 years. I was on that board, and I know how much time and effort goes into these fairs and all the things that the chamber does. So, listen, some things, this is such a tiny amount of money compared to what we need to generate. I'd rather have you work with other organizations, work with other business leaders, come up with more events, come up with more ideas and more concepts to bring people to Fountain Hills. So, I gotta be against this one, Councilman Spellich, but I appreciate where you're coming from, and I have total respect for what you're trying to do. This is not the way to do it.
Okay. So my question then would be, what do we tell Concourse in the Hills that brings 22,000 people on a one Saturday? What do we tell them when we ask them for money, which is a totally nonprofit organization, who then turns around and then gives that money to the Phoenix Children's Hospital? Do you see the disconnect? And before you, let me just say this. We talk on this council about money and what's important. I don't know about you, but $24,000 is a lot of money to me. And $24,000 should mean a lot to this council in the condition that we're in. So think about the constituents that we have, that we tell them, give us $185 for this future fee that's coming up, but then we don't care about collecting money where money is owed. Collecting this fee, I am convinced, will not change the amount of people that come to this town, not one bit. It is not going to change it one bit. And there is a disconnect, I believe, between us council members when we ask the citizens for things and then do different things for other people. Fair is fair. And yes, this council should be concerned about tourism. No doubt. I'm not anti-tourism by any stretch of the imagination. But if we charge one group for something and we don't charge another group for something, it's not fair, it's not equitable, and the people of this town have a reason to be upset by it. And it's not, I'm not connected in any way to the chamber. I don't have anything against the Chamber of Commerce. They've done a great job. But let's focus on the big picture. And we ask residents for money because we're strapped for money. And to sit up here and say that collecting $24,000 is pennies or penny wise and pound foolish is a slap in the face to every single voter that we're going to ask $185 for.
Any other council discussion, or were there any more speaker cards?
No, there was not.
So I'll go on a limb here, just because what you said about being a disconnect, Councilman. I'm a almost 36-year resident here. I don't feel disconnected at all. I don't feel like I make decisions disconnected, like it's mine or whatever. But I see certain value in partnerships, and whether our membership isn't going to add up to 20,000. You know, a couple of events that they sponsor isn't going to add up, maybe, but it'll be pretty close to value. The sales tax, the hotel, the food, the fact that it's a nonprofit, I think does play a role. It does play a role. The history, the years and years, the free booths for the service clubs, the way the service clubs make money at those booths, Kiwanis, Rotary, all that. We know that the political parties, we get there. It's a community event, and it's a partnership. And I do think that there's room for some differentiation between some of these events, and I certainly think that the fair, the two fairs, and the relationship with the chamber is one of them. So it's not basically because no one else will come or they won't get enough artists or that kind of thing. It's more of a relationship and a decision that was made that I do respect from the council a couple of years ago. And so I still am in favor of that decision that they made at the time. Looks like we might have another speaker card, so we'll go ahead with that.
Yes, Michelle Webb.
Thank you very much. Michelle Webb. Good evening, everybody. I saw a lot of passion, and I'm sitting here going through my mind, how can we solve this? Because I think both of you bring up a great point. And my thought is, what about taking a percentage of what people make? So the concourse in the hills, however much, percent on a fee, because they are a nonprofit, versus the chamber, whatever their percent is. And you can decide that. I mean, I don't have it. It just came to me while I was sitting there. And that might take care of it, because then everybody's fair. It's such a big thing. I understand the fair brings in tremendous amount of people, and it covers a lot of other businesses. But on the other hand, we do have a problem here, and all we hear about, and unfortunately the residents, when I talk to them, well, all I hear is that the fair, all the town ever gets is $50. So it is a concern. Some people have said that. So I don't know, maybe that's a thought. I don't know what your thoughts on it are. I'd be interested to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Councilman?
Well, thank you, Michelle. Something like that might be a good idea. I think it'd be hard to monitor what each group takes in. I mean, not quite sure what you would base the percentage on in terms of what the chamber makes. I mean, again, you're going to be relying on, a lot of different groups and outside books, and I just don't know how you would monitor something like that. And I'm feeling kind of like a wet noodle here, because it's like I too kind of agree with everybody, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but I can see a little bit in all these arguments. So I don't really know, a definitive stance on this and which direction to take, because, with all due respect to Madam Mayor out there and the chamber, I mean, I'm at all the fairs with Kiwanis. I hear comments like, it's gotten too big. There's too many commercial vendors, too many outside people coming in, and I know the chamber needs to obviously meet a certain budget in terms of the expenses. And, Kiwanis, Noon Kiwanis, I mean, we don't make as much money as we used to, because there's a lot more competition. And so there's that factor. But then on the other hand, I totally agree with Art as well that the fairs obviously do bring in, hundreds and thousands and millions of people over the years, and the sales tax does come in. I know it's hard to monitor, agree with that. So I don't really know where I stand on this, because I see a little bit of all this, and it's hard to disagree with the fairness issue, though, and I do agree that, I had 21,000 with the numbers in the staff report for the chamber, but I'm hearing 24, but I would tend to agree that that could be accommodated by the chamber and probably not affect too much the fees and stuff. But I mean, I'm sure they face rising costs every fair, from pro-am and traffic control and all the other expenses that go along with conducting such a large event.
Someone else, yeah?
All right. I agree. I see both sides. When I was sitting here listening to all of you and Ms. Webb, I was thinking of that word equitable too. I mean, it just seems like we've picked a few entities that are benefiting and then others aren't. That doesn't seem to set right with me. Also, when we talk about needing revenues and I look at the numbers, I mean, you may say it's a small amount, but honestly, let's say $20,000. That's possibly 10,000 people or residents that wouldn't have to pay the public fee. So, I mean, I see both sides. I see the tentacles of having this fair and all the benefits. I have friends myself from out of state that come for that. So I know that we gain a lot, but we've had so many discussions about revenues that I'm very sensitive to this. And I don't know which way to go either, because I see both sides. But I keep thinking of that word equitable. Now, those are my thoughts.
Councilman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we are discussing the golden child of Fountain Hills when it comes to the events. Our fairs, the two fairs we have, clearly are the most successful events we have. Number of people, number of artists, and I clearly sat here and listened to both sides of it, and I don't think this council is going to come up with the right decision. I think the right decision is going to be, let's sit down with the director and the staff of the chamber, and let's sit down across from each other and let's professionally hash out an agreement as to what's fair and equitable for not only the chamber but for the town. And we are assuming that the chamber is just making a ton of money, but that's an assumption. That's truly an assumption. Maybe we're making more on our 6.5% sales tax than the chamber is. We don't know. I mean, and there's not a council member or the mayor up here that can say So if we do anything, let's professionally sit down with the chamber in an open meeting and hash it out. And it might take 4 or 5 meetings, but I know the chamber is for Fountain Hills, just like the council that's setting up here that's way overpaid is for Fountain Hills. And I think that the solution would be, let's quit rolling the ball back and forth. Let's get the chamber in the same room with us and let's have a good, honest, square meeting. Now, that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Councilman?
Yeah, Dennis, appreciate that. That does sound like a lot of common sense, which sometimes we get accused of not having enough of that. So I would concur with that. And obviously, we need to have Christine Collier there too, representing the Oktoberfest, because I know her budget is much smaller and probably a lot leaner and tighter than the chambers as far as her event. So obviously we'd include her as well. So
Let me just bring this up, because this isn't the only place where we have different fees. I mean, we waive fees on a lot of different levels for a lot of different reasons. So if we do change this, it's going to change this, obviously, this whole policy here, which would go into, amending the municipal sponsorship and naming rights policy. So it has more ramifications to all of the other things we do. People use the community center, and then we have different rates for that. We have different We have the whole thing about, well, yeah, starting up a new event, so we're going to have smaller. There's a lot of inequity, I think, if we really wanted to look at it that way. So just to say that once we start talking like this, we're actually re-evaluating all of that, because we can't just do it for one. Then we're saying, okay, then are we going to have a wedding pay the same if they live in Fountain Hills or if they don't? Or are we going to let a new event, a new 5K or something, are we going to make them full price or they're out? I mean, so this is where we're going if we're going to try to go with equity as the motivator and not consider partnerships or what these things may do for the town as a whole, not only because they give us things to do, but because they actually generate dollars for the town. So just if we go down there, just be aware that there are other ramifications to it. Yes, sir.
I think right now, let's just talk about the fair. And I clearly understand what you're saying, Mayor. I totally agree. We've gone down this fee line now forever. When are we supposed to see the?
October.
October. Well, it's just around the corner. So, and once again, we are not able, this council, and we aren't capable of talking about all the fees that are involved. Now, I agree with you. It's a broken system. The system's broken, and we've retained a company to give us good advice. But for tonight, let's just focus on working with the chamber and crossing the other bridges after we see the new fee schedule. And I agree with you. It's broken, and it needs to be fixed. Can we fix it? I don't know. I would like to think we're capable of it.
Well, yes, and I think obviously we can speak. I think that's a great idea, but I still think that it makes me think of the IGAs we have with the school district. So we're not collecting every single dime we can from every single entity that ever uses any of our, which is all of us, all of our facilities or our land or our parks or anything like that. So I don't see, if we are going to just try to keep it narrow, but the rationale is to be equitable, I don't see how it doesn't turn into a whole big thing, including IGAs. I can't charge a community member $185 unless we're collecting every single dime that we can, in which case we're going to have to start talking about our IGAs and about any of the other things that we do when we sponsor events. We sponsor events all the time. So are we going to do that anymore?
I think somebody needs to put on the coffee, and we need to say we're going to be here till 3 o'clock in the morning, because it's crazy. We can't resolve this in one meeting, and we can't. So let's either agree to stay here until we're done.
I think it's very clear that there's consensus that council wants to make some changes. It's not clear tonight, though, what those changes are, because we got 3 different opinions. So I do think that the timing might be really good when we deal with the fees as a whole. I also think that, I just quickly reread the policy. I think the policy is still really good, because if you remember right, the council really wanted to encourage new events to come into town, not necessarily charging the full freight for those events. With Peter Volney, the only reason why he had to start being charged was under the policy, the way it's written. It says that that the organizations that are granted the no fees, that money is supposed to stay in town to like other nonprofits or whatever. And it was only after he decided to go. And I understand the whole history, and I agree why he chose the Phoenix Children's Hospital. So that might be something where we amend the policy to address that situation, because I think that that's a perfect example of an event that draws a lot of people to our town. So.
Thank you, Mayor. And that's a very good point. And like Councilman Brown said, we don't have all of the numbers and figures to make a compelling argument, obviously, either way right now. But I can tell you from my perspective, working with the Chamber for all these years, that I know, and maybe Mike, maybe you, Councilman Mike, you can say with Kiwanis too, we have a contract, we do all the garbage pickup for the fairs, both fairs. And the Rotary has a contract And I believe that we are now at $5,000 per fare. So that's 10 grand of money that's coming back to the Rotary that is given back to this community in many, many ways. So I bet you we're not the only nonprofit that they partner with to get that fair to be working and contributing to this community. So like I said from the beginning, I said I have tremendous respect for what you're trying to do in trying to continue to get these fees, which we do have to look at. But if we put on paper what they give to us, what they give to the community, you know, what value we get as a town from the chamber and vice versa, I bet you that we got a pretty even playing field here, and in the partnership has been a pretty fair over the years. So, you know, if we want to go, back and forth, and now they're going to start saying, well, you know what, we'll do this event for you, but we're going to charge you to organize it now. And then we're back, and I don't think that's a healthy relationship with an organization that is, the mission is to help businesses succeed in this town. And if businesses don't succeed in this town, and our sales tax revenues don't rise, and the people of this town don't want to pass a primary property tax, and we are, I'm not even in favor of the 185. It was a consensus on the council. My one vote's not going to make the difference. But I don't like the way it's going, that we're just starting to tax the people without representation. But nevertheless, I think that in this case, you want to table it for now, Dennis? We can table it. I'm not in favor of moving forward to charge these events, and I'd even look at, in considering other events that bring this many people to town, that we would waive those fees, except for the fees associated with potential damage to town property, which when you have the concourse in the hills, every penny of that $7 grand is going into the maintenance of that park, and we are out, on guarantee we're out of pocket more than that. So that fee is nothing compared to what it actually cost probably the town to allow them to be there.
Okay, so I'll be more than happy to table this, and we can talk about it. I agree with Councilman Brown. I think it's a good idea that we sit down with all the people that are involved in it. I think it's an excellent idea.
There is the mayor had requested a joint meeting at some point with the chamber. Maybe this would be the top agenda item.
That's fine. I never did say that there were.
So.
I never did say a certain dollar amount or anything. I'm more than willing to sit down and talk about it, but I think that if we leave this up to the residents and everything, I think they would side with me. So, well, let's see what happens.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments about anything? We have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second. All in favor, say aye. Thank you.